Not unless we can read the name.
Unless we can read the name.
That'd be Mike.
I asked Keith who the name was. He said he couldn't read it.
Okay, so somebody came in and
Maybe we can mention we all got a letter, but we couldn't read it. But the person writing it doesn't realize that this board has
Okay.
no control over the school budget. That's quasi-municipal.
Yeah.
now I have another one. I have another one here, but I think they're legal. They're questions that might impinge on our legal situation. So I'm hesitant to read that publicly as well.
I'm not quite sure. I don't know what's left out back. Yeah, I think
So
so.
we're asking for
Way up there.
things in writing from the public. I want to make sure we're acknowledging, at least I'm thinking.
But
we should.
has that got a signature on it?
Yeah.
It doesn't have a signature, but it's got a name.
What's the name? You know him.
Oh, yeah, he's my neighbor. He lives on Jordan Street.
He's asking questions that have.
I don't think he intended to have this read.
Okay. Okay.
He did ask me if all the board got one, and I said yes, they did.
Okay.
And I don't think he intended to have this. No, I don't think he intended to have that read at all. Knowing Jeff, because he had discussed it with me.
Okay. Very good.
And is he here? No, I didn't see him come in. He might be though.
This on the agenda anywhere. Distributed last week for signature.
I didn't put it on the agenda other than under your task, when you go ahead and review your policies and procedures, I think you want to include that within that package and
Okay.
take care of it at that point.
Okay.
I was asked to give it to you guys, so
Yeah.
unless there's comment or suggestions on it.
You read all of these? These are all the peripheral requests for funding.
We just got him tonight, you know. Yeah, no, I haven't read them all.
Well, some of them are just. See, this is
I wouldn't count on, Bart,
Yes.
I wouldn't count on that clock being accurate. Whatever you got on your watch is
We're getting
probably more
close.
accurate
That's for
than
your
anything else.
county community action, for goodness sake. I served on that board for 14 years. I was treasurer.
I haven't read this
until last
letter. I haven't
November.
read anything in this file, I don't think, here. Did you just look at it?
I saw that, yeah. I have not read that because that's here. Has that been distributed? Everything?
All I did with this was, you guys had asked to have some of the background on the social service agencies, and I just provided it for you for informational purposes.
I didn't
only.
get that one.
Yeah, that's yours right there.
Oh, it is, okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Wow, they served 64 from Berwick last year.
Yeah.
All right, this May 15th meeting of the Berwick Board of Selectmen is hereby begun. Melissa, everybody's present up here for roll call. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes from the May 1st meeting. We all got a copy of those.
I'll move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the minutes from May 1st, raise your hand. 5-0, Melissa. Public comment. Please identify yourselves as you step up to the podium. Mr. Stone.
Ken for you.
Excuse me, Ken. Ken. Have a seat.
I live on Old Berwick Road.
Thank you, Oscar.
And I am so glad to see everybody that we don't stand in room home almost. Thank you people for coming down there and looking at these selectmen right in the eye, because if they wonder what you're doing, if you look at them real hard, they'll start thinking real hard. I appreciate you all coming. And Eleanor, we've got a real good board, so I don't need this shirt anymore. Y'all see it? Back when things were down, it says Eleanor, the only leader the town of Berwick had. Don't need the shirt no more. You can,
Thank you,
you
Ken.
don't even make a good grease rag.
Oh, thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Mr. Poirier. Mr. Stone. Go ahead, Oscar.
Last meeting you had, I heard you talking about the gateway to Maine. And I find that to be a joke with what happens. Now, this is not the first time I've been here, probably won't be the last. But you come from Somersworth, New Hampshire, into Berwick, and what do you see? You stop at the stoplight, which we most of the time have to. You look to the right, and there's got to be 12 or more signs for LP gas, not to mention 6 signs on or around the building there. You look to your left, and Spencer Matthews now has quite a few signs. And then there's a bunch on the corner. Last weekend, there were at least 3 plant sales, 40% off on clothing sales for some store in New Hampshire. A third one, I don't recall what it said, and 3 or 4 tacked to the utility pole. I don't think that's very attractive for the town of Berwick. You go out there tonight, and there's a sign on the island, half draped over one of the adopter spots. If the town doesn't want those, why do you ask people to take care of them and then allow them to be cluttered? I'd like somebody to answer that.
Well, all I can say is it in our ordinance that we can take signs down, or do we have a sign ordinance that prohibits those things?
Eleanor, that's an excuse. You don't go
No,
to any
no, it's
town
not,
to
it's
see
not an
this stuff,
excuse. That's right.
you know.
I'm guilty. I put up the sign out here for the plant sale for the library and the one on the corner over there, and I even did the lettering on them.
Thank you.
And you did a good job, but they don't belong there.
Where do they belong?
I don't know,
Well,
but it's
tell me.
public property. Any more than the electrician sign out there, or the mattresses, or the hot tubs. You know, it makes the town look trashy.
I think that's why we bought the sandwich sign, so we wouldn't have trashy-looking signs. We have
Well-
very neat-looking signs, and those signs cost us almost $200.
You missed it last weekend, because if you've driven over the bridge, it's not attractive.
I wasn't, I
know.
wasn't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Mr. Manager, is there anything you'd suggest in terms of code enforcement, dusting off the sign ordinance and taking a look and making sure people
What
are
I'll
in
do-
compliance?
Sure, what I'll do, Mr. Chairman, is provide interpretation by the CEO to you as to how he views these things and what enforcement action may be required. I'll provide that report at your next business meeting.
And maybe if we can't enforce what we have the planning board work on an ordinance so that we can enforce it. And it would have to go to the people, but we could do that. Because I have to admit, I'm a little prejudiced as far as the library. I think that's something we have to raise money for in order to support it. But I think if stores in Somersworth are bringing signs over here and hanging up, and somebody's selling gas or something, I think that's a different story. I really do.
We don't want to change the rules for the benefit of a few, but we want to also make sure we're enforcing the rules that are on our books. So I think that's a fine idea. Look forward to that report. Anybody else for public comment? Very good. Oh,
Two.
yes, Mrs. Wright.
Jody Wright, 12 Wilson Street. I want to start with what I found yesterday in Alfred at the Superior Courthouse. It appears to be stamped in on April 11th, 2012. there is an affidavit that was signed and notarized on April 10th from past Selectman Joe Chambers. And why I'm bringing this to your attention, all of you, is because in it he makes a lot of suggestions that the town knew about 3-bedroom housing and the town knew about the larger footprint. I'm going to share with you one thing that I was at the planning board meetings because I am in a butter, and Joe Chambers was not there. So where he heard this information, if this was in a side conversation with Keith Trefethan and David Bateman, that possibly might be, but he never heard it in a planning board meeting that I attended, that it was going to be a 3-bedroom, but he's attesting to this. He's also attesting to that myself, because I'm an abutter, he's saying the abutters are afraid that it was going to bring criminals into town, prostitutes. Now, I have nothing against prostitutes. I have nothing against criminals if they're within the law. Obviously, I have a problem if it's a criminal on the run or a prostitute maybe in my yard. But I have no problems with people doing whatever they want. So that's false, because I am an abutter. I never heard mention of a prostitute in any of the, that was the first time that I had heard of a prostitute was in his affidavit. He also says that never once, I'll read you what he says. A lot of people said that this project was supposed to be for elderly housing, which was not true, and objected to the concept of low-income housing. My problem is, he says, which was not true. If he did not attend those preliminary planning board meetings, how is he saying this isn't true? So he attests to this in his affidavit that was put in almost 2 months prior to the court case. And also he says in this that he bought the house over on 9 Rochester Street, and that the Attorney General's office found that there was no impropriety. But he says this is why he was recalled. Now, I don't understand it, because he was recalled for many reasons, and if I remember one of them quite clearly, that a lot of people had concerns that he had a past criminal record and that he was doing these kind of underhanded things around the town. I think that was a good part of why the people were upset when they found out he had a criminal record. The other thing is, he says here that people were upset. There was a heated meeting with a lot of residents speaking out against the Sullivan School project. Up until this time, I had not heard much in the way of opposition to the project. Is there any reason, Bob, that you're shaking your head? Is not what I'm saying is true?
Jody, and you know, you and I have a very good relationship. The only thing I'm saying is, maybe he should have been informed that you were going to do this so he could be here tonight. I wonder if it's the propriety of it,
It's public information. If he attests to things that he wasn't at a meeting, but then he attests to them in an affidavit to a judge, then I think it's very much, it doesn't matter, it's not relative. He's saying, as my position as a selectman, all the way through this.
okay,
So he's
I just want to make sure that legally, you know, we're on firm grounds of listening to this, really.
So are you saying that's why Bob was shaking his head?
Well, I asked him, I said, you know, should we have asked him here, knowing, and I didn't know anything about, yes, I take it back. I had a telephone call today telling me about this, but I didn't know.
Of course no one knew. It was never mentioned. I was in court May 20, and his affidavit was never mentioned by the judge, and/or any of the attorneys involved in the case, and I think Ernie was there. You probably didn't hear of Joe Chambers. No, because it was put aside. Keith Trefethan, I wonder if you heard of Joe Chambers' affidavit before, right now or today?
Mr. Chairman, I think this whole discussion that we're having right now is totally inappropriate. And I would suggest very strongly that we end this conversation and move on to our business. It wasn't part of, generally, public comment period, Mr. Chairman, is made up of issues that are going to be related to that we have on our agenda for discussion. And I think we need to move on.
I have read the affidavit that you provided today, Mrs. Wright, and you know, he does give his view of things. He speaks only of public meetings where these testimonies took place. He does say that, you know, you are just one of many abutters, so perhaps he did talk to other abutters. And he does mention multiple reasons for the recall. So I'm going to have to agree with the manager in this case. I think you've had good opportunity to present
Correct. Yes, and
what's in
I
this
was
affidavit,
done-
and I assume you're going to make it public via maybe the Berwick Community News website or some other.
Yeah, I
means
gave
you
it
haven't
to
already.
Ron Long, so I don't know what Ron did with it, right? I gave it to you? Okay, so we got that.
But you
My-
didn't, you didn't give a copy, you didn't get a copy for the board?
For the Selectmen's
Yeah.
board?
I did not, I have not seen a copy of it. I just.
No, I just actually, I retrieved it.
You're all mailed one this afternoon.
You,
And every one of you have it.
except me. You mail me one.
Selectmen have it.
But anyways, okay, I'll move on from this. My next issue is last week we were here and you were working on budgetary reasons, and I know that's on your agenda because you had to approve last week's budget or last week's meeting minutes. And I know that many of us brought up the fire department budget. And I did see online this week on BCN, on Berwick Community News, I was privy to a graph. I didn't need the graph because I am capable of doing simple math, but the graph helped. And in that graph, it says that the fire department's budget has doubled since I moved to town, late 2005, early 2006 to now. My issue is you guys only cut their budget, as you did everyone else's, by, I think, 6%, and correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm really not understanding. And David, could I have the graph so I can give you some numbers? Okay, I'll give you the highest percentage change in the 6 years. Would be 60%, and that is in the general assistance fund. So that's for the needy fund. So that's been the highest percentage change. It went from $25,000 to $40,000. That's the budget in the last approximately 6 years. Now, the one closest to it on the high end is the fire department. It went from $258,000 to $513,000. That's a 98.81% increase in the same period of time. So as I said, the closest one to it was the general assistance, which is the needy fund. So I guess I'm here. Last week, I heard between some selectmen that they had issues on decreasing the fire department's budget based on, they wanted everything across the board. They wanted 6% for one department, 6% on another. But when you have this dramatic increase, and this is taken right from the records, I don't understand an iota of how you get your budgetary sense. And I think this is very important, that someone explains how that works out. Ernie, anybody any chance? Anyone? Brian?
Will we be talking about this later?
Yeah, I think the facts as you presented them speak for themselves, and although we did vote during the budget workshop last week, we are going to be making final decisions tonight. Those were
Oh, so that's
basically-
somewhat nullified? What you did last week is,
It's not nullified, but because of the crunch that we're under in terms of time, the special election, et cetera, the recall, we're right down to the last minute on the budget, and so therefore we had to make as much progress last week as we could in preparing the warrants, which need to be finally signed this evening. So I believe, Mr. Manager, that it was your desire for the consensus voting last week, so that you could be best prepared for tonight. Would you like to? make any additional comments
That's
to that?
absolutely correct.
So we are going to revisit, and we're going to have to re-vote on each one of those warrant articles tonight for
Tonight.
final determination.
and then possibly Mr. Manager, in his capacity of being a manager, can share with us why one department only has a double increase in the same period of time, why would that exist?
The only thing I can tell you, Jody, was my reasons for voting the way I have over the past years that I've been sitting on this board, and this is my 13th year, although not consecutively.
Right.
Why I have been voting and seen the budget inch up. And later on, I'll just say, I still believe that is true.
Yeah.
So.
You believe
and
what
I'm-
is
and I'm-
true?
And I'm just one person. The necessities each time
The
we voted.
necessity of true?
The
Okay.
necessity, maybe, and you say the big increase, but there's a history there. And I'm not sure that people who are.
Well, Keith, I think, would be able to address that. I would
Well,
think.
I'm talking about the history back from the late 70s, right up through. And there has been, because I've been involved more or less. And there's been reasons for some of these things.
We'll revisit that when we talk about that warrant article later on tonight. How's that? Anything else? There's another public comment at the end, so if
Yeah,
you think of
I'm
anything.
trying to do it now because I'll probably be going home, so that's why I tried to make use. I'm not trying to barge in and take the front part of your meeting, but I will say that I'm disappointed in the respect that here I have been living here since the early 2006. And not only has the fire department's budget increased almost double, 98.81%. So yeah, that's almost double. Also, my taxes have almost doubled too. So there's something really funky going on here. And that's the other part of an explanation I want.
Well,
I
if-
want to know why I chose to move to this town based on a tax rate, and then 6 years later, I should have moved maybe to Wells, where I was before I came here, because I know Keith knows what the tax rate is there, because if I'm right, I think he owns a home there, and he might understand that the tax rate is real cheap there. I should have stayed where I was.
But I think if you look at the increase over the years, you've got to look over to North Berwick, to Noble, to the superintendent's office over there. The school budget is one that has put your taxes up.
Well, I can see by the town employees, they're the ones shaking their heads that they're in concurrence with taxes being higher, but I don't see anyone else's.
We also haven't, gotten to the fun part of our jobs here on the board, which is coming in the next few months, and that's to talk about developing an aggressive plan for bringing in business. You know, North Berwick has Hussey, they have Pratt Whitney. If we increase our business base here in town, that will help alleviate some of these challenges that we're facing currently and looking forward. So, yes, Mr. Long, excuse me.
How you doing? I agree with part of what you said about bringing business to town, but, and Mrs. Murphy, I understand that the budget is gonna go up. I understand that. But the problem is that we've done nothing to curtail growth in this town or have a sensible sense of growth. And that's why our portion of the school budget is so high.
Well, if you were here at the last meeting and listened to Peg Wheeler, she hit the nail right on the head when she explained that.
Yep. And I wasn't at the last meeting because I was told that you guys weren't gonna hold any votes. I heard it was just a workshop, so I was shocked when you voted on things. So, pretty surprised by that, so. In regards to what Mrs. Wright brought up earlier, in regards to this affidavit from Joe Chambers, which I emailed you all today, why, under the disclosure that the attorney that I think that Keith and Alan hired, Mr. Dent, under disclosure, he had access to this and other affidavits, why wasn't they used?
We received an initial legal package, but that was, all that was available at that time was what the town was presenting. We never did receive a follow-up package, other than the decision regarding what Bateman submitted. So I think in hindsight, it certainly would have been nice to have had that
I only bring
weeks ago.
up the issue part because it appears that Alan picking Mr. Dench, I have no faith in him, just like I have no faith in the town manager, because through this whole process, you've read the stuff that Bateman has supplied to the town. You've read the stuff that Bateman has supplied to the court. You heard Bob Crichton say 3 weeks ago in public meeting that he was in an illegal meeting in Keith's office with the Batemans, and they talked about 3 bedrooms at the time. It's clear to everybody out here, and I just don't understand why Keith's still with us. I don't understand why you haven't fired him. Anybody?
That's really a personnel issue,
Okay.
Mr. Long, and this is not the forum for airing those
Very good.
detailed
The
grievances.
last thing I have is, when I did play back the budget hearing, Janet Canny mentioned that Mrs. Murphy asked a question about some budget item that was around $32,000. And Janet spoke up and said that that was for mailings and things like mailing out the water bills and stuff like that. Am I wrong, Mrs. Murphy? Shouldn't that be coming out of the enterprise fund?
The water bills?
Yeah.
Well, I would think so, but I don't know. Does it, Janet? Yeah, it does, she
That's
said.
not what she said. So what was that $32,000 budget for the town hall?
And that was for postage?
That's what she said. She said it's for, for mailing out water bills and things like that.
Well, I think maybe it was, maybe part of it was printing the information things that we put out, and I thought she said that the town report was in that? And,
If the town report was in it, then the money for the water bills would be coming out of a different fund and not that 32,000, isn't that right?
well, they should come out of the enterprise fund, because
Evidently it
that is a separate fund, and there's no tax
I'm getting to a
tax
point
dollars
in
into
that.
it.
I'm getting
But,
to a point, and that's why.
I'm not, I'm trying to get my computer running here, it's not going good. To see just what did go on last week.
Brian, I can appreciate that your dad was a firefighter. I don't know probably too many people in this room that doesn't have a family member that was a firefighter, or know somebody that was a firefighter, or anybody in this room that doesn't have respect for firefighters. So let's take that right off the table. What we are talking about is fiscal responsibility. You weren't here, Bart wasn't here, Ernie wasn't here. In 2009, when a group of us asked Keith Trefethan, do not put on the budget, or do not put on the ballot the SAFER grant and the fire department in the same warrant. We want those separate so we can vote on them separately. Never happened, he refused to do it. I wasn't the only one that asked, there were several people that asked. And then, the Saturday before the vote, we vote on Tuesday, a member of the fire department said in the paper, and I emailed it all to you, so you all have it, the department will cease to exist if this doesn't happen. Well, if you're an old lady that's up on Worcester Road or out on Cranberry Meadow, what are you gonna do? You want a fire department to come when they call. This town was misled by people, just like they were misled with Bateman. That's what this is really all about, Brian. And then when it comes to the budget,
If I can just address the
Go ahead.
comment about my father, it had nothing to do with how I voted on that issue.
That's
It was
not-
strictly an attempt to show my appreciation for the services that both police and fire make. And if
That's
I
not how
believe
you-
if you, excuse
that's
me,
not
if
how
I
you
could
came
finish.
across. Yep.
If I could finish. I may have misspoken or I may have been misunderstood, and I'm sorry for that if I was misunderstood. But my goal by making that statement was to show a clear appreciation for the services that those two departments provide, because I have people that do both in my family.
Very good.
Strictly all it was for.
The other thing that I was surprised at the board, the town manager that night, and I watched the whole thing, I rewound, watched the whole thing. When you talked about the town hall, when you talked about the police department director, there wasn't any defense. But boy, you got really defensive when you started talking about the fire department. It's just kind of an odd observation. The chart that Mrs. Rodriguez shared with you, if you did the average is about a 27% increase, which I sent you all at the beginning of the week. I'm asking you to please set the fire department budget at $327,000 to be consistent with the other departments that have grown. And the other thing that you guys haven't seen that haven't been here, I mean, Chief Town is here tonight and he can attest to it. He's gotten beaten for the last 10 years when it comes to his budget. Nobody else has. Just remember that. And then finally, Keith, is the Berwick Volunteer Firefighters Association a part of the town or not?
It is not.
It is not. Did you know that it's a federal offense to use a town postage permit for a nonprofit that isn't a town entity? That's a federal offense, Keith.
I'm not aware of it, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Mr. Rodriguez.
I don't want to belabor this issue because I know the board has work to do. I do want to point out that for weeks, we have asked that the town prepare for the Bateman case. For weeks, we have asked that an engineer be hired and that the town engage an attorney to work towards this case. I think we've demonstrated by production of the affidavits, and there's 3 of them, and there's more information, that the town is really caught off guard, much like we typically are, because we sit back on our hands and wait, and wait. The same spin that happened before is happening now. It's happening in the court, and it's happening with our planning board. I will read to you from Bateman's application to the planning board that they delivered close of business on Friday. It is my understanding that we are currently on the agenda for the planning board's meeting on May 17, 2012. We look forward to presenting this application for amendment to the board, and we will address any comments or questions the members may have. Our request is that the planning board will approve this amendment at its regular meeting on May 17th and render its finding of facts and conclusions of law as soon as possible thereafter. What they're asking the planning board to do is when they meet this Thursday, give them the go-ahead, full speed ahead. Their application to the planning board, again, is more spin. So we've sat on our hands since the stop work order. They are not sitting on their hands. They have many engineers and they have many attorneys working towards this. And it's an abdication of our responsibility not to be pursuing this more vigorously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. The Board of Selectmen did authorize the planning board to engage and retain Attorney Dench for the purpose of preparation for that meeting. And we also, as a board, did recommend that they hire professionals to include engineering resources as allowed by our land use ordinance at Bateman's expense. And I think we can only trust, without unduly reaching out and influencing that board, we can only trust that they I know they're working with Attorney Dench, and I trust that they are taking our advice to also use professional services as authorized by the land use ordinance. So we're not sitting on our hands doing nothing. Are we pursuing an aggressive investigation into wrongdoing? We are not. But we are trying to actively work toward this May 17th meeting on Thursday.
And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that, but I will point out the town has an interest in this separate from the planning board. It is my understanding that Bateman filed suit against the town, that Bateman filed suit against 2 of the town officials. What I have seen happen is we very easily put all the responsibility on the code enforcement officer, or all the responsibility, as I'm hearing in this case, on the planning board. The town is a board in itself, and it's my position only, but we have a pretty big dog in this fight, and we should be building up that dog, not pushing it to the planning board and making it 100% their responsibility. Just my position.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Poirier.
Ken Poirier, 11 Old Stanford Road. Is there any of the members of the planning board here tonight?
Yeah, you.
I'm just an alternate member. We've got to go with this Bateman thing real slow and real easy. If we don't, it's gonna cost the town a lot of money. Because believe it or not, I think Bateman has got millions to spend on lawyers. So give us on the planning board a chance to see what's gonna happen Thursday. And back to the budget, I'm gonna have to back up Jody Wright and Ken Roderick, and also the chairman. The chairman of the last meeting that I went to here tried his best to get the fire department down to 10% cut. Was that right, or was it 20? 20. Huh? 20. And he's only one. He's just the chairman. He's only one that's 4 of the members. He only had 1 vote. And the rest of the board didn't want to take it down 20%. What did they vote for, Bart?
6%.
6? That's the best he could do. Well, I'm saying to you people of the town of Berwick to support that man and this board. 3 of them are new. And be patient with them. We're in a heck of a mess in this town. We gotta be patient with the people in power. And I hope the planning board can come up with a good resolution Thursday. And I'm on that board, but I'm just an alternate, I might not be sitting on it. But be patient with these people, and be patient with the folks that get up. If you've got an opinion. Ron Big, you here? Ron's here. Yeah, there's Ron, I woke him up. Ron always gives me the benefit of the doubt by saying you're older than I am, and I give to you, Ken. So he's got an opinion, and I got an opinion, and we'll have to go to Jody Wright to make the decision, and it puts her in a bad spot. Because both Ron and I are nice guys. End of speech.
Thank you, Mr. Poirier. Any other comments?
And what was that all about? What was that all about?
Mr. Levine.
Mr. Poirier out of state.
Just real quick, with regarding Bateman and the planning board, it seems to me like it's a situation where we're kind of treating them in a way maybe we shouldn't. What we have is a developer that has built something, and on a business model of easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. That's a lazy, crafty developer. They do it all the time. Make them take it down. That's the only, having a meeting that, and I hope I'm wrong, I heard that nothing of the past is supposed to be involved in this. It's looking at it as it's a new issue. That's wrong. They've violated an approved site plan, and in its simplest form, they need to take the building down to the approved site plan. If they want to come back in a year or two, if business is good in the low-income field and they need to expand, then let them come to the board. Let them apply for an expansion and all of the elements that are associated with. But I find it disturbing that, one, they were able to rush this meeting. I mean, some people wait years to get an approval from the planning board, and this isn't even kind of a workshop. This is them applying for approval Thursday night, which is the same night as the school budget meeting. I mean, is no one suspicious of this at all? I mean, it's have them tear it down to the approved plan. It's really the simplest approach. What you're doing, it's like a bad child. You're just going to make them misbehave more, sorry. That's it, because that disturbs me, as Ken said and the others, putting this all on the planning board, I take nothing away from them, but are they capable to maneuver in this arena? I'm not sure I would be. It's a lot, and it's a lot that document says they're there for approval. So we have all the historical stuff about we knew, we didn't know, he knew, he didn't know. That part, Thursday night, make them take it down to the approved site plan and let them go through the regular channels. You know, if every time they open their mouth, the first word is, we're a good partner to the town, we do good things, we do this. Oh, and if you don't do what we want to do, we're going to sue you. Well, get out. Sue us. They can't win. They exceeded an approved site plan. Doesn't matter who they said they got approval from. Where's the sign drawing that exists for the conditions that exist today? There isn't one. Take it down. It's the only answer. You have to, in a complex thing, you have to retreat to the simplest policy. They violated the policy. Don't coddle them. Make them meet their expectations. That's it. Thanks.
Tom, I'd like to say something. I agree with you, tear it down. But I also believe that Bateman knew. They have worked at other municipalities in this state. They knew they had to go before the planning board in order to build that extension.
Of course.
So they did it deliberately, and that's why I say, tear it down.
And to your point, I absolutely agree with you, because part of their presentation, whether it be to Maine Housing or Bangor Savings, the cover page.
You want to turn it down? Excuse me.
Mr. Poirier, Mr. Levine has the podium. Mr. Poirier.
All due respect, I went to that court hearing a couple of
Mr. Poirier, please, sir, you're out of order. I'll let you go afterwards. Mr. Poirier, please.
I want him to understand the judge might say you can't tear it down.
You can have the podium
All right, but you
shortly.
understand him and I are.
Sir,
I'm
please.
trying to give you people information
Courtesy
what the
and
judge is gonna
decorum.
do.
Thank you, Ken. I know your heart's in the right place. Mr. Levine.
I do too.
any-
But the cover sheet says they've had over 300 successful developments in municipalities.
So they know the laws.
Of course, they know the laws. They thought whether you or the planning board were asleep, and they took advantage of it.
And I don't know how many people in this town realize it's not for 75 years, it's for 90 years.
It is
Because
absolutely for 90
they
years.
put it 90 years because the Internal Revenue Code 42 in order to get funding from Maine State Housing.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that was totally misrepresented. It was
That's right.
misrepresented at a public meeting.
And I discussed it with a lawyer from Maine State Housing.
So why?
And they're not
why-
concerned.
Why coddle these guys? These guys are smiling at you and smacking you in the back of the head in the same motion. Why rush them to a meeting? When most of these people would probably rather attend the school board meeting. That's where actual voting is.
Some of us would.
Yeah, well, you know what, I'm a little torn on it too. But, you know, I have to look at it as, well, this is a 75-year problem, this is a 1-year problem. So while I'd love to go to the school board meeting, I'm gonna go to the planning board meeting that doesn't have a public comment section until it's all over. So, really,
Thank you, Mr. Levine.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for providing the ending for that. I'm sorry,
So-
I might have jumped ahead of somebody else.
The Batemans submitted their application to the planning board exactly 1 week prior to the meeting, because that's the minimum amount of time required. And that's just outside of our jurisdiction, right? The planning board receives the application, the planning board
Schedules
sets
their
the
meetings,
meeting.
and the planning board begins their review. It's part of the process, Mr. Chairman.
Yep, thank you.
Can I have a word now?
Mr. Poirier, you've had one opportunity already. There's another public comment section
I just want
at
to
the
say,
end.
tear down is gonna cost a lot of money to this town. I heard what Judge Brennan said, short of tearing down. The judge is the one that's gonna hold the key to the whole thing if we tell Bateman to tear it down.
Thank you, Mr. Poirier. Anybody else with a comment? Yes, ma'am.
Lisa LaPierre, Pigtail Lane. I just have one comment. You suggested that the board allow everyone here to vote on the fire department budget. And I would like to ask the board to do that with your proposed 20% decrease.
Thank you, ma'am.
That's it, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we do have a full agenda tonight. There is another public comment section at the end. This is right. You've been up once. I know you have grandchildren at home, so if you can make it quick, I'll make an exception for a second comment here.
I will be brief. It's just something that I thought of. Two things. One thing I promised Janet on last Friday when I saw her. I think it was Friday. But the other thing is, when I was at Misha yesterday, I met with Dan Brennan. He's the development director for Misha, Maine State Housing Agency. Very nice man. He probably spent an hour with me. And why this is relative, particularly to you, Eleanor, because I know that you have stated before, like a lot of people, that they voted on the Bateman project, considering that it was going to be senior citizen housing. And prior to me going up to meeting with Dan, I had asked the agency to provide me with all documentation from 2008 and 2009, which they did as far as application processes. They're still kind of putting everything together as far as emails and intercommunications. All that is going to be packaged on a CD and sent to me. But what I looked at yesterday definitely tells a story, and Keith might be able to help us with this story, that there was no application ever for senior citizen housing. So when Bateman came back to the planning board and or other citizens meetings that we had in the preliminary meetings, and they said, Misha won't fund us, they never asked Misha. I was sitting with Dan Brennan, he's the development director. So all that kind of application processes would have gone through Mr. Brennan. He never heard of senior citizen housing. He never received any paperwork regarding. He never rejected it. What I did find is applications in mid-2009 for family housing, which was rejected because they didn't have enough QAP points. And that's when subsequently there was some letters from Keith and others saying that they'd find some wiggle room to get them point numbers, and then ultimately came up with the QAP totals that they needed. So what I did find, just so that people here in the town, as well as you, Eleanor, know that if you did vote, which you have said you did, with the inclination that you were voting for senior citizen housing, it was never asked for to Misha. Misha has no money into this as of today, and will not have any money in this. So if you guys stop the project, meaning the town of Berwick, do what my husband suggested, team up, become a unified force instead of just putting it on the planning board or any other entity, then no one's going to lose any money except Bateman. And if he's an example for a bad developer, so be it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mrs. Wright, you're saying that Bateman made verbal representations to the community saying that this was going to be a senior housing project exclusively.
No, it was.
In
it was a-
preliminary.
It was a discussion, and most of us thought that's what he was going to.
Because I know
So
the
when we went
documentation
to
has
the
always
vote-
indicated low-income housing. But you're now saying, I think I heard you say that they came back and said that they were rejected for elderly housing, and
I
you're
would
saying
say-
that they never even applied.
They never applied, it was never mentioned, there's no
How could
correspondence.
they be rejected if they never applied? I
Well,
haven't seen the tape. That was a couple of years ago. That would be interesting, but
I never heard Bateman say they were rejected, but I was told that Bateman said they could not get the funding for senior housing. And then they couldn't get it for 75 years, but they got it for 99. And then 5 minutes after that was rejected, they had it for 75. And that's when I said something here doesn't add up.
But could I answer your question? You kind of were asking me, prior to the vote, we were under the belief via Bateman's people, not only Bateman, their engineers, their planning people that came and did the forums for Berwick, made us believe that it was going to be senior housing. This is before the vote. When it got voted on, the language by help of the town manager was written so broadly that just said affordable housing. So when people went and checked yes, they thought they were checking for senior citizen housing. They didn't know affordable meant carte blanche for a bad developer. So nevertheless, we came back after the vote. Bateman came in the door, I think it was November 19th. So real quick after the November vote, Bateman came back to town and said, la-di-da-da, now we got you a new package. And this package is going to be family housing. I actually, because I'm very demure and quiet and all that, I got up off my chair when they were leaving and followed them to their car and asked them how they could bait and switch the Berwick community. And I'm going to tell you what they did, just to give you an idea. They didn't answer me. But I kept saying, how could you come and present senior housing to us, put the language, help Keith write the language on the ballot so it's broad, people vote for it, then you come back and say you're giving us family housing? We didn't ask for family housing. Did we talk about family housing? Yes, we did. But we didn't ask for that. So they came back. I followed them. There was the engineer, the dad, David Bateman and Nate Bateman. And I said, how can you were picking up all their flipboards. You didn't walk to the car with them that night. You were picking up their flipboards. And I walked with them, meaning you, Keith.
I got the answer to my question, the clarification I was looking for.
Yeah.
So
I'm not long-winded. Okay.
thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Mrs. Wright. Okay, the board has solicited written comments recently. We did receive one this week that was pro fire department budget, kind of anti police department and school budget and library budget. Nobody on the board nor the manager could make out the signature. No other identification was possible, so I won't be reading that this evening. But that, in fairness, that paraphrases what it says. Okay, I hesitate to look audience-bound one more time. We're being very tolerant of public comment right now because there's so much going on in town with the budget and the Bateman project. It's been 50 minutes already. Are we all set for the first public comment section? Okay, good. Thank you. Jody, I can't.
I have to apologize to Janet. I told her I would. About the electric bill, sorry.
I think, in fairness to the people at home, there was a question recently regarding the electric bill at the Sullivan School project not being changed over to the Bateman Partners account until January. The town did not pay the bill from August 31st till January. It was, I think, under threat of shut-off that finally the Batemans changed the name on the account. And I think there were some accusations made or possibilities suggested that the town was late in doing that, and indeed they were not. So that's what that apology was for. So, okay. Communications, Mr.
Yes.
Manager.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I have an initial statement that I first would like to read, and I'll go through the rest of the communications. The Berwick, and this is from me to the audience as well as the selectmen. The Berwick Board of Selectmen and I have mutually agreed that my services as town manager for the town of Berwick will not be required after June 30th, 2012. I want to take this opportunity to thank the present elected officials and all the elected officials I've worked for over the past 7 years and 9 months for not only the opportunity to serve them in their majority decisions, but the residents of this community. It has been my distinct pleasure. None of the efforts and goals of this municipality could have been achieved without the leadership and experience displayed by the employees who serve this community. I want to thank them for the work they have performed and assistance they provided to me when called upon. Again, I'd like to thank all the boards of selectmen I have served, and I wish the residents of this great town all the best in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
The next order of business we have is information from the Public Utilities Commission relative to a change in the rulemaking adoption notice. I've copied the notice and provided that information here if anybody is wishing to see their changes. It's pretty redundant, but if somebody wants to see it, they can. I believe you all received this, but there was a letter that was provided to us April 30th from Comcast and Xfinity detailing some changes in subscribers' packages. I won't elaborate much on that unless there's some specifics that the board wished me to pursue with Comcast relative to this matter.
Well, I got a telephone call on that today from a citizen who lives on Social Security, and she feels though that is quite an increase, and she said they keep increasing, and it's getting to the point where people kind of don't feel as though they can afford all these increases, and she wanted to know how come the board allowed these increases.
Again, the board cannot dictate fees. That's set by other matters, and it's not part of the contract that we agreed to sign with Comcast.
That's what I said, but I said the previous board had signed a contract, and I was not aware of what was in that contract.
Is there any competition like MetroCast in the area, or is this a monopolized utility, basically?
It's a monopoly.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Mr. Chairman. It's not, but in hindsight, it could perhaps look that way. If MetroCast wanted to come in here, they would have to get some sort of agreements for Comcast to be able to use their infrastructure in order to provide services. And I'm sure that the cost, once negotiated, may be very comparable to what we presently have. I think the leverage that you have is looking for changes within the contract when it comes up for renewal again, and to try to press upon those changes that you can make.
And when is that contract up for renewal?
I'd have to check it again. I think there was a 10-year renewal a couple years back, so we probably got another 8 years or so.
And in the meantime, we're just subject to their telling us what the rates are going to be.
Yes.
Do they insist on a 10-year
What channels we're gonna
contract?
get.
Yes, that was part of the contract. It's a typical contract, and it's part of the contract that was signed by the Board of Selectmen
Because-
back when it was signed.
Because we never signed for 10 years before that. At least when I was on the board, we would only sign for 5.
The contract was signed, I believe, for 10 years. I can double
Yeah,
check it.
I understand that, but I meant, did they give the board a choice of how many years, or did anybody insist on cutting it in half?
They did not insist on cutting it, no. If you'd like, I can, at some point in the future, I can have Brian Christensen, the Senior Manager of Government and Regulatory Affairs, come to your meeting and talk to you about the goings-ons and the process. It may be informational for you all, and provide you the opportunity to ask questions directly to Brian.
Well, because now if you have another television, you're paying extra for it. That's one thing they're going up on.
And the whole town does not have service. It's not just people down long dirt driveways, right? There's
correct.
someplace on Pine Hill Road where it stops. and a
There's some
couple-
on Long Swamp.
Riddland Road.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's, if the board would like, I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have.
Sure.
Bring them in and let's talk about all these issues and let them know that we're considering our options and we're not happy with the rate increases and the channel restrictions and other things that they're imposing on us.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Have a newsletter from the Maine Water Utilities Commission, if everybody's interested in reading it. Periodically, when the legislature is in session, we get various legislative bulletins from MMA relative to issues that they're dealing with. One of the ones that's referenced here, and I can provide copies if you do, is the general assistance funding and the insurance issues, as well as tax exemptions that they're contemplating, so.
According to the news tonight, the general assistance is going to be reduced by something like 5 million, and it appears it's going to pass. That means the town is going to have to pick up the difference when it comes to that. You know.
But they did change the rules too, I think.
Yeah, no, everything seems to be trickling back to the towns, and it's back to the taxpayers is where it ends up, unfortunately. And I don't know just how much of that we can take, but it's getting to be almost objectionable.
Just a handout from Unitil, reference to pipeline gas safety and those types of things, if anybody's interested in seeing that. Got a newsletter from a company that provides a different type of method of binding controls for gravel roads. It's not really germane much for us. We have a couple of gravel roads left, one that will be eliminated this year, as I understand, as we work on the end of,
Diamond Hill?
no, the road you live on, Diamond Hill Road.
Diamond Hill.
Sorry.
That's what I said.
I didn't
You
hear
don't
you,
speak
sorry.
very clearly.
A letter from, or two letters, back-to-back, from Maine DOT indicating that in the 2013 construction season, they'll be doing some mill and fill on .10 miles southerly of Route 236 Powerhouse Road, extending 1.23 miles to the intersection of School and Wilson and Allen Streets.
Excuse me, Keith, are they talking about a cap, or are they talking about rebuilding?
They're talking about a mill and fill.
Oh, okay.
So they'll be milling it and then, again, resurfacing. And the same thing would be on .55 miles on the beginning at the New Hampshire line, extending out Route 9.
Starting from the bridge,
Yes.
what year?
What year?
Yeah.
Be the construction cycle of the summer of 2013, so it'll be next year.
I wonder if they're putting that together with the reconstruction of the bridge. It would appear to me that would be the ideal time
Yeah.
to,
It very well may be. Selectman Creighton.
no, it would be logistically ideal to do it at the same time.
I'm sure that as the board begins further discussions on the bridge rehabilitation, that in the other public meetings that'll be coming up, that would be a great question to ask them as to how that's going to tie into that project. That's all I have for communications tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Does the board get to vote on accepting the letter of resignation from the manager?
I don't believe we have to. I mean, we've agreed to that in an executive session, and we agreed to the parameters that were established, and that was, and we've all agreed to the, and I read it tonight, so I think we're all set, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you for your service, Mr. Manager.
You're welcome.
Accounts payable.
Proceed.
Okay, we have two accounts payable warrants. Town warrant 1244 for $54,196.79. We do them all together, don't we?
Yes, we do.
And we have another warrant, number 1245, for $141,046.80, and I move these warrants to be approved.
The second.
All in favor? Did you vote, Mr. Crichton?
Yep.
You did. We've had some recent resignations and retirement dates moved up. When we now have 3 for the end of this fiscal year, June 30th. Not sure when we, or how we begin the process of filling those positions. Now's probably not the time, but since we don't talk in private, this is our only opportunity to discuss things like this. What are your thoughts?
Certainly got to give it some thought.
I provided a task list for you this evening, and that was part of one of the things I had right on the top. I do have some suggestions for a course of action that I would recommend to you folks. Obviously, you can do with it as you see fit, but it may provide you some breathing room while you begin to put together your thoughts relative to not only the replacement and and having a new town manager sit in place, but also a new finance director at some point in the future. So when we get to the task things, I can talk a little bit about that if you'd like. And if the board wishes to provide some direction to me at that point, I can make some inquiries for you and begin the ball rolling at that particular point, depending on what you would like to do.
Very good. And for clarity, the manager has alluded to his position, the finance officer's position, and then the other is the retirement of Judy Buckman, town clerk, and that's also going to be now on June 30th. So for clarity, that's the third position that we're speaking about. Report of committees. None.
I have none, sir.
I don't have any tonight either.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
we're kind of held up.
We'll move right along then. Unfinished business. Recommendation and approval of the forestry unit bid.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have Lieutenant Sam Tibbetts here this evening from the fire department that will give you an overview of the paperwork that he provided, and I believe a recommendation from the fire service relative to this. Just so you know, Chief Plant had back surgery on Monday. As I understand, he's doing extremely well and is itching to get out of the hospital. I believe he'll be home tomorrow sometime. So I wish him a speedy recovery from his back surgery and back to service as soon as possible. But Sam is here to provide some information to you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Tibbetts.
Forestry bid that we sent out was through yet another FEMA grant. The town's cost match on that, I believe, is $6,250. It's right around the $6,000 range. The total amount that they had as part of the grant is $125,000. So whether we got a $30,000 truck or everything we could get out of it, the town's cost is still $6,250. So taking that into consideration, we formed a committee, kind of went through task analysis of what it takes to put out a forest fire, what things help us be more effective, and what we could do to essentially limit the amount of manpower and response time it takes on a brush fire. We put the specs together, sent them out. You received some that were very high. We redid them, kind of cut it back a little bit, sent them out again. For essentially the same performance of truck, we took a couple little bells and whistles off here and there, attempted to get it within our budget. This time we've got 3 bids back. The low bid, which is too large to fit in our station, which was outlined in the specs, so kind of hard to go with that bid. The high bid, which best met our specs, out of our price range. And then the middle bid was right in our price range. It had a couple of things with it that were not exactly what we asked for, but they generally met the intention of it. So our recommendation would be to go with the Blanchette truck, as it's within our budget and it best meets the needs of our forestry truck.
So you're happy with that Blanchette manufacturing
We are.
bid, and it will do the job for the department.
We are and it will. And I think that's the absolute best truck we could get, given the funds that we had, which was a great opportunity for us.
Where is that vehicle built, do you know?
It's somewhere out in the Midwest. I spoke to them on the phone, and I can't think off the top of my head the state that they're built in. But they have an extensive list of trucks they provided throughout the country, have a good reputation.
Do they furnish delivery?
They do, that's all included. Delivery, training, everything's included in that bid.
So there's no hidden cost, is basically what I'm saying.
Correct.
Quite often that
Correct.
is
The
the
nice
case.
thing about FEMA is they're very specific about how the contracts, the bids have to be written, so that it kind of alleviates all of that. And delivery, everything's included within that bid.
Your specification, I think, I read it earlier, talked about the compartment holding 2 to 3 firefighters, and that is one of the shortcomings of this bid. I was wondering if you could address that. The compartment space,
The compartment space, that's not passenger space.
not passenger space, okay.
That's tool storage space. We laid out very specifically the equipment we wanted to carry on the truck and how best to access that equipment without having to climb on top of the truck. We didn't get into a lot. We left that up to the manufacturer as to where they would locate it. They did come up with the total amount of storage space we needed. There is room for everything. The configuration of it isn't quite as good as it was on the, I believe it's a Firematic Brat truck that we got, but they did accommodate everything that we wish to carry.
And what's the, go ahead, Bob.
Did they provide you with a pictorial review of the vehicle?
They did provide us with a technical drawing of it, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you know roughly what you're getting? I
We
mean,
do. They sent
you've
us
seen
pictures
actually
of similar
how it's-
vehicles. They didn't have anything quite like it because any fire apparatus is a highly custom vehicle these days. Sent us a technical drawing of it. I went through it. I spoke to them on the phone, discussed the compartment space and some of the questions we had with them. And overall, the truck does meet our specifications, and it carries all of our equipment and carries the people that we wanted. And
What is the capacity of the vehicle as far as water is concerned?
it is a 400-gallon tank.
Really?
We
And
specified
that's on a Ford chassis, is that correct?
Ford F-550.
550.
550, correct.
So if you need to supplement that water supply, is that something you can hose, bring up via hoses and connect to the vehicle?
Yep,
So that it can
yep.
work its pump system?
It was specified in plums that it will take intake water. Also, an advantage over the forestry we currently have, it has a hard suction capability. So this vehicle will actually be able to set into a water supply and establish its own water supply, which a lot of the times in the middle of the woods, it's not practical to lay 2 miles of hose. We've done it in the past in other towns. It takes about 8 towns, 3 days to do it, but it's much more helpful to have that ability. But yes, it does.
So this vehicle is not like a D8. It can't mow over trees. It can only go into the forest on pre-cut roads and paths.
It is specified to have the ability to run over some smaller type trees. It's not made to run over big trees. It's not made for climbing rock walls. It's built with brush guards and capability to take the smaller brush and the limb hits and stuff, but it's not one that we'd probably recommend running over rock walls and large trees with, no.
What's the ground clearance? Do you have an approximate idea?
From memory, I believe it was around 21 inches, but I can't verify that without looking at the
Really?
picture.
What do you estimate the annual maintenance and carrying cost of the vehicle would be? How much is it gonna cost the town each year to operate it, run it, maintain it?
That number I don't have off the top of my head. I hope desperately it's less than the Humvee that we have. Mid-'80s vehicle, very scarce on parts for us to get anything. We have to find a specialty parts dealer shipping. So I would hope it's less than that, where it's a newer vehicle, especially out of the gate, and then we're being a Ford chassis, a lot more available.
Are you gonna turn that current vehicle over to the state immediately when you get this new one, or?
My understanding, and I have not read the contract, was that as it was purchased through state surplus, there's a clause in there that requires it to go back to the state. Again, like I said, I haven't read the contract. That's my understanding of it, and I can't verify that for you today. But it does have to go back when we decommission the vehicle.
Did they give you a credit for it or anything? Because you did pay $5,000 for it.
That I do not know.
I was wondering if they give you a credit or something for it.
I do not know.
I doubt you're gonna get much credit out of the state.
It would seem to me that.
Well, why do they
this
want it
is-
back then? We can sell it for junk and get a lot of money out of it.
If we authorize the purchase of this vehicle, it's a replacement for the current Humvee that we have, right?
It is, correct.
So, could you assure the board that upon taking delivery of this vehicle, you would decommission the other one, and we could cease to have to pay support costs for both vehicles
That
for
is
any period of time?
Correct. It'll obviously be a couple of weeks. There's training on a new vehicle that goes into it and getting people certified on it and taking the equipment off the old one. But the goal is, once the new one is in and in service, the old forestry will be coming out of service.
Is this a gas or a diesel?
This is a gas.
Gas engine. It's fine. with me. I don't have any further questions.
Are we supposed to approve this?
Yes, you need to
tonight?
make a motion and a second to approve the purchase so they can go ahead and begin the logistics of getting the
A
vehicle.
motion to approve the recommendations to purchase the Blanchette Manufacturing vehicle with their approved grant.
Second.
Further discussion? It's a lot of free money. It's not free, though.
No, it's not,
No, such-
nothing's free.
there's no such thing as free.
You guys really feel like you need it?
You need a forestry vehicle. The one we have is coming to the end of its life cycle. And this is probably the best opportunity the town's ever gonna have to replace it.
Mr. Manager, you'll make sure that if we, after this vote, if it's approved, that they will decommission and dispose as state surplus or properly, whatever that is, the current vehicle, right? So we're not paying for both at the same time. That's important to me.
That's generally our accepted practice, Mr. Chairman, yes.
What is the delivery time? Do you have any idea?
I do. The delivery time per their contract is before November 1st, barring any complications from the manufacturer of the chassis, which is Ford. Their delivery date's projected to come in within schedule. If that gets delayed, obviously, the truck manufacturer, which builds the body and installs the pumps and equipment, will be pushed out a little further. But it should be, barring any big complications here, by November 1st.
And that's an all-wheel drive vehicle?
It is.
Yeah, the warranty was reduced in the new specification, but you want to address that?
Yep. When it came to the warranty, we asked for the world, trying to get the town the best possible warranty out there. Typically, a complete custom chassis manufacturer for an engine will provide their own warranty, and they'll work with you as far as the length of that warranty. The problem with going with a commercial chassis, being the Ford, is it's Ford, and you don't dictate to them what their warranty is. And without going astronomically higher for a custom chassis, which on a brush truck is just something that wouldn't be worth your while, you kind of have to live with the best that Ford's offering at the time. So we attempted to push them up on the warranty as far as we could, and they came back and said, this is what Ford offers. Ford has the best warranty and build frame out there, apparently, for fire trucks, because everyone we talked to was building on that frame. So they came back and said, this is what Ford's gonna give you.
Do we insure our fire vehicles?
Yes.
Mr. Manager? Okay,
Yeah,
so
through,
the insurance on a new vehicle is going to be more expensive than the old vehicle. Have we priced out insurance on this vehicle at all?
That's not necessarily true. I'd have to
No.
look at that a little bit further for you, Mr. Chairman, but we have a blanket insurance coverage through MMA, and they look at these and they provide a cost associated with it. So I don't know how much effect that would have on our rate or our costs going up. I'd have to look at that a little further for you.
I'm really hesitant to spend any more money in this area, but it's a $125,000 grant, so I guess we're ready for a vote. All in favor of approving the purchase of the forestry unit vehicle raise your right hand. Congratulations.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam, appreciate it.
Final review and approval of ATM warrant.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I provided to you the changes relative to your workshop session based on some of the what I consider the votes, just to provide me parameters in order to provide, to develop a warrant that would be fairly close to what you folks had requested. Based on, before you start, I'd just like to give you a little bit of a overview of where we're going to be with this, with these changes. The changes that you have proposed from your workshop session will indicate to the taxpayers that the amount that we'll have to raise for the municipal operating budget will be down $106,554. That reflects a 19-cent difference in the tax rate. Presently, the municipal side of the tax rate is $4.79. This will reduce that rate to $4.60.
How much is the school budget?
We believe the school budget is going to be coming in with the adult education piece at $809,935, which will be an increase from $9.01 last year to $10.27, or about $1.26 on the tax rate.
So the net is $1.10 increase in the mill rate if we were to stick with the current
That's
warrants as they
That's
exist.
correct. And I've provided the warrant to you. If you would like, we can go right straight through it. I would say that at each warrant article, particularly the ones with dollar amounts, you're going to have to decide for me whether the Board of Selectmen recommend a yes vote is sufficient enough. We've used both types of warrant decisions in the past where the board can say a yes vote, or they can say a yes vote and provide the vote. In the past, we've had boards say they wanted what the votes were, and other times they have not. They've decided not to do that. So it will be whatever you wish to do when we get to those numbers. Once we get through the budget, depending on what decisions you finally make and what votes you take, I would recommend that we take a short recess so I can go up and prepare a final document for all of you, and then have you provide to me several signed documents of the warrant so we can provide that to the town clerk for proper notices and postings and so forth. So without delaying any further, we'll start the process, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Article 1 and 2 are pretty self-explanatory. There are no votes that are needed. First one is to elect a moderator over the meeting. The second one is to elect by secret ballot 2 selectmen who also serve as assessors and overseer of the poor for 3 years, and 1 select board member for MSAD 60 for 3 years. I'd like to say that I believe, and I'll look to the town clerk if I misspeak here, there are 3 people that have returned their papers in order to run for the 2 positions that we have available. We have Mr. Selectman Brian O'Connor, who has returned his papers and wishes to serve again. We have resident Ed Gannier, who ran last time earlier this year for a position, and we have resident Tom Levine. So we have 3 people running for 2 positions. I don't know about the school board, just 1 person. Article 3, to vote on the following referendum question, the ordinance entitled the Disbursement Warden Ordinance. The purpose of the ordinance is to provide an emergency alternative to the statutory procedure for approval of warrants authorizing the town treasurer to disperse public funds. I've added Exhibit A here, and it will be part of the packet that will be presented to the people at the public hearing that you will hold later in June to go over the warrant with the public once again. This is specifically there as a result of now having a recall ordinance available to the residents of the community. What it does is provides us the ability to allow the remaining board members to sign disbursement warrants, so we don't have what essentially affected us this last time, where we had to wait several weeks in order to disperse dollars to some of our vendors who were very nice of waiting until we were given approval. Article 4 is to vote on the following referendum question, an ordinance entitled Town of Berwick Mass Gathering Ordinance. The purpose of the ordinance is to regulate mass outdoor gatherings, special event attended by 175 or more persons to continue 2 or more days, is intended as a commercial enterprise and could create a hazard to public health and safety. This was predicated on the music festival that we had, I think, the last 2 years, where our public safety folks, as well as the Board of Selectmen, were very concerned about a group of folks gathering to have this festival, and we really didn't have any ordinance in place to have any overview over the process and procedure. Selectman Murphy has been very instrumental in redeveloping this ordinance, and I believe that the exhibit that's attached is what her and the group that she was with, I think it was Brian Sincotter and her, spearheaded this group, had come up with. I believe there's been fairly increased amount of not only the planning board reviewing it and giving it a blessing, but also our public safety folks.
Yeah, both fire chief and police chief.
The first warrant article that I'll need a motion and a second on will be, shall the town vote to appropriate $1,712,949 for estimated revenues to reduce the amount to be raised by taxation for FY 12-13, which begins July 1st. What is the board's pleasure?
Is that an accurate figure now, Keith? Is that the latest?
It's the most accurate figure I have.
At this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Does any changes that we might make tonight to future warrant articles impact that number? Or this is the revenue side of the equation?
That's the revenue side, yes.
Unaffected
It will be unaffected.
You want a motion on all these?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, I move that we accept Article 5.
Second.
All in favor?
It's article.
Just one point of clarity as we're going through this. How would you like the notice to be? Right now, I have the Board of Selectmen recommend a yes vote. Does that suffice? Or would you prefer to have the votes that are taken?
You know, put down 5-0.
Yeah.
It's all right with
You
me.
wish to have those placed there? Very good, thank you. Article 6. Shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $211,920 for the general expense account for FY 12-13, which begins July 1st, 2012. What is your pleasure?
That was no change from last week.
That is correct.
Now, that new contract that we signed, that still we can, if we decide to go with a single assessor, we only have to give them 90 days' notice, am I right?
You're in the wrong, this is the general expense. This is not related to.
I thought it said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm one ahead of you.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we accept Article 6 as written.
Am I correct in the fact that I have it written as 40,000 increase in legal fees, and then I heard 30,000. Which one of those figures is?
We had 10,000 set aside. You added 30 additional $1,000 to it to make it a
For
total of 40.
Okay.
Do we need to set aside any additional monies for the retirements and resignations that we received recently for next year? Or is that going to be
You got
overage
15,000.
in this year because it's
15,000.
as of June 30th?
It is certainly something that you're going to need to contemplate, and I'm not sure how you want to administer it. Substantial amounts of unfunded liability is existing with the departure of 3 administration folks. I'm not sure if you want to do it now or wait until your November votes. And it would be my recommendation to wait till your November votes in order to put the money aside and take it from your fund balance as opposed to asking for additional tax dollars to do it. So, though you'll have the obligation, you'll be committed to pay it, I think when you come in November, when you have that special town meeting in November, that you'll allocate the money at that time.
Well, didn't we set aside 15,000 towards it?
Yes, and it's part of this,
budget.
package.
Yeah. I thought so.
Do we have a second to Article 6? Okay.
I'll second it, Mel.
All right, so, all in favor? So can we make a note for your predecessor, that we need to discuss that for the November meeting?
Yes, I'll make sure it goes into in a packet for whoever is sitting there. Article 7, shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $93,324 for the assessor's office account for FY 2012-13, which begins July 1st, 2012.
And that's when I asked a question about that we had in the contract. I think it goes into next year, doesn't it? Is that contract?
The assessor's contract, yes, goes into next year, and you have a mutual release from that if you decide to go in another direction with assessing services.
Well, I'll move we pass this amount for the assessor's office.
Second that?
All in favor?
Article 8, this would be the first article that during your workshop session, you began to make some adjustments within the recommended amount. Shall the board vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $475,554 for the administration account for FY 2012-13, which begins July 1, 2012?
The chair, based on feedback this week and in our meeting tonight, would like to mention the possible reconsidering of our percentage reductions from 6% to 10 and from 3% to 5, keep them in the same proportion. On most of these, I am going to take exception again to the fire department when we get there. But just across the board, we generally agreed to 6% and 3%. And I think you guys received many of the emails that I did, and we got some feedback tonight that the townspeople would like us to at least consider being a little more aggressive. So I want to put that out there, that perhaps we should increase those percentages, keep them in proportion, but increase them slightly. We talked last week about the savings on the mill rate for the town's portion being 25 cents, and it's only going to be 16.
19.
No matter what we do, we're going to have an increase because of the school.
Yeah, 19.
As I stated last week, 10% is really not debilitating. It's not easy, but.
If I may, I'll make some comments here, just to provide my opinion relative to the matters that you've taken. You certainly have, it's within your purview to provide broad discretion as to what you wish to present to the townspeople for warrant articles. However, the changes that you've made, particularly though in this, if I may, in the administration budget, right now, you've reduced it by $33,297. That is going to have a distinct effect on the services that we provide. The administration and staff are continuing to look at where those changes are going to be. But it's certainly going, in my view, it's going to need to be in personnel. It's going to modify how customer service is operated, how many hours in any given day or any given week that it's open. It also, and I'm not trying to be um, fearful to people, but there's a distinct possibility that we'll have to look at how we collect and administer the excise tax piece as well as new registrations of vehicles. So for us, everything is on the table. I respectfully disagree with the chairman when he talks about a 10% cut. I believe these budgets are significantly trimmed at this particular point. And in fact, before this board sat a little over 8 weeks ago, the previous board provided guidance to me and staff to only present to you budget increases that were reflective of fixed costs that we had no control of. Most of the changes that were reflective prior to your votes and your direction provided to me last your workshop session had only those changes in them. So I think that, in my view, if you're not going to increase and put money back into these budgets, I would strongly suggest that you to leave them the way they are at this particular point, to provide yourself the ability to sit and discuss further the changes that these budget reductions will reflect in the departments that you have, and provide your department heads, as well as others, others in the staff, the ability to come forward and provide a course of action for you. In the event over the year that you find that that these savings are significant, and in fact you could get further savings the next year, you still have that flexibility to make those adjustments in your next budget presentation. So I'd strongly believe that you guys have taken a strong, hard look at this. I think you've really thought about it a lot, and that would be my recommendation to you this evening.
Well, on this administration account, I think I suggested that we close one day a week, like the towns, surrounding towns around us have done. And I don't have a number of just what that would save. I did talk to Judy a little bit about it, and maybe that would help a little bit. But I feel quite strongly on that. If Dover, South Berwick, North Berwick, Lebanon.
Well,
York's been doing it for, I was gonna say 40 years, but at least the 30-some years I was there. York did it, and they're a bigger town than we are.
Sure, I'm not familiar what York does.
Kittery does it.
But what I'm saying to you here is that the changes that you made, in my view, are substantial. These changes now will have to be implemented. The staff and others will be able to provide to you options of what you're going to have to agree to in order to change. So I think it's premature to sit here and say we're going to cut a week and we're going to do this, that. I believe we're not at a point where we can provide you solid information to be fully informed on that.
I meant to mention that one of Judy's reason for pulling her retirement date up to the end of the fiscal year was to help the town out with the budget next year. It would be better for her to retire in December. She had moved that up to August and has now moved it to the end of the fiscal year. I would also, so thank you for that, Judy. I would also suggest that as we take a look at, this will come up in the goals section, I believe, the fact that we're going to take a look at job descriptions, performance reviews, that kind of thing. I would suggest with the turnover that we're going to see in these 3 positions that we're not going to bring lesser experienced people on at the rates of pay that the senior experienced people are leaving at. So there's also going to be some savings there, and moreover, an opportunity for the board to take a look at the pay ranges. And if they don't exist, I'm not sure that they do, to set a range based on experience level. And I would suggest that we could bring people in at a lower level than the people going out are at. So I think there's an opportunity for some savings in all areas as we move forward with that in mind too. So I'm a firm believer in, setting the bar and then figuring out how to do it versus what the manager suggested. Which would be leave it perhaps high, and then find the savings later and make an adjustment. I'm not sure that in government that those kind of opportunities exist. I think if they have the money, they'll find a way to spend it. I would suggest setting the bar and making them meet it.
I think that some of the feedback we've gotten from some department heads points out from them that the 6% cut that we had talked about is going to force them to encourage some change in how they run their operations. I think that 6%, we may differ on the number, but I think 6% sets the bar for what we expect going forward as a board. And we could work towards more savings in next year's budget to phase this in so that the members of the community the services aren't cut for members of the community in a fashion that they possibly couldn't handle. I think it's step one, basically, of a multi-step process is the way I look at it.
Mr. Manager, if we set the bar at down 6% in this area, and we do take a look at a 4-day-a-week schedule, and we start to realize savings, is it possible that that money will find its way into a surplus account and not be spent and actually exist there for offset next year?
Right. What occurs, Mr. Chairman, is that each budget that's being receptive here is not a line item budget. It's a lump budget specifically for that purpose. So in essence, that we're talking about Article 8. Say you end up only spending $450,000 because you've gone ahead and made some additional changes in terms of your operation. That money then lapses into the fund balance, and it's part of that piece that the auditor looks at every year and provides you a final number. Right now, we're at 2.3, I think, with the last fiscal year that ended. And so that money's there, and then it provides you the flexibility to utilize that money if you so desire in the future. In the past, boards have used it to fund capital improvement plans, or have used it in several other ways. Primarily, in the past, our recommendation is to try to move our fund balance up a little bit based on the amount of money that we need to have in any given month. So there's a lot of parameters there, but you do not lose it, sir. It does not. It goes back into a fund balance that can be used by you as you see fit in the further time.
You being a long-term government employee, you see it differently than I do. You see the money being able to be used elsewhere versus I see it not as the town's money, but as the taxpayers' money. And, we shouldn't collect it to begin with if we don't need it.
Well, there's a variety of ways to look at that, and I obviously respectfully disagree with that whole philosophy in that we have an auditor who's provided you some recommendations that your fund balance should be over $3 million because of our cash flow. Right now, we're collecting taxes twice a year, and then we use the estimated revenues through excise tax and revenue sharing to try to offset that as we're collecting those taxes. So, and I'm sure that the finance director can attest. I've seen her in my office several times when she doesn't know if she's going to have enough money to make payroll because our fund balance is as it is. So there's several ways to look at it.
What's the pleasure of the
It's
board?
certainly, over the years, the actual increase in the budget is steadily risen. I mean, there's no question about that. I think at this point, this juncture, because we're faced with such a huge increase in the school, that we're obligated to make some adjustments. I'm not sure I'm I think the 6%, I agree with Brian, I think that's a good start, and I can understand the process of streamlining services, you know, as a hedge to save some funds. But, you know, it's embarrassing if you should go 10%, and all of a sudden your deficit spending, because there just isn't enough money to go around, kind of puts egg on your face, because you still need to operate, basically. So my view is, I think 6% is adequate this year.
Well, you know, I feel as though that if we had come in, that first Saturday we met when, yeah, what's it say, whatever it was, anyway, when we should have been doing the budgets, I thought, working on them more, and we had said to the department head, bring in a budget of a 10% cut, so that they could have a chance to go through it and do that. And we could look at it and decide whether we thought we could afford to do a 10% cut, or whether we couldn't. So I feel as though that is, that the way we're doing it is not the right way to do it, in my personal opinion. My opinion is that if you're gonna make a 10% cut plan on it, you tell the department head, yeah, can bring a budget in that shows me a 10% cut, then we'll make a decision whether we think that's fair or we need more money. And we did not give them the opportunity to do that in any of these budgets. And I don't think that's, at least not the way I would like to do a budget. But that's my opinion. So I feel as though we...
Suggesting that there were extenuating circumstances, like the recall, the period of time where the board wasn't able to function properly.
Well, that had probably had a lot to do with it, although Bob and I did discuss the budget between the two of us. And we did interview all the department heads. But that's the way I thought that, you know, and even when I was not on the board and sitting out there and someone made a 10% idea that, you know, they cut our budgets 10%, I thought, good, let them bring in a budget with a 10% cut, and then the board can look at it. You don't have to do 10%. You could have, you know, done 3, 2, 6, whatever you wanted to do. But at least you'd know what a 10% budget would look like. And so I went along with 6, and I think that's probably good, and I guess that's what I'd like to go with.
I think the Board of Selectmen are going to have ample opportunity over the next year to look at some of these operating areas and be able to work with their new town manager and staff to see how you can streamline operations further. My concern, I mean, the 6%, you know, to me, it is a lot. I mean, when you get into the public safety issues later on, when we get to those, I would rather that the community truly understand what it's going to get as a result of the budget cuts, rather than just rashly pick a large number and say, that's what we have to have cut. I think public safety issues are a little bit different than going to register your car or to license your dog. I mean, somebody may have to wait in line a little bit longer for a registration, or they may have to rearrange things definitely. But when you get an emergency call for a heart attack or a fire or something like that, we just want to make sure that we have the means to get there.
What's your pleasure on Article 8? I'd entertain a motion in a second.
Make a motion, we accept it as written.
I'll second that motion.
What was the actual figure, Keith?
It's $475,554.
That's compared to 507,038, which is the 6% cut we agreed to at the workshop.
Yep.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, correct? All right. All in favor of a 6% reduction in the administrative budget on Article 8? Raise your hand.
Thank you. Article 9, shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $128,600 for the town hall account for FY 2012-13, which begins July 1, 2012. Folks, what's your pleasure?
This one was an easy one.
Motion to accept as written.
Second?
All in favor?
Thank you. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $110,471 for the Planning and Ordinance Administration account for FY 2012-13, which begins July 1, 2012. This is the one that I believe, Mr. Chairman, that you tabled from your previous meeting, requesting additional information from the code enforcement officer. I believe in your packet, I provided a list that I received from the CEO relative to this matter. We'd entertain a motion at some point on this one.
So this is in reference to our discussion about full-time code enforcement officer. You guys all have the statistics.
Well, didn't we discuss at one point, I don't know, maybe it was Bob and I, with Keith, on sharing a code enforcement officer? Didn't we discuss that at one time?
You did. And the gist of that discussion was that we should look at it when attrition occurs. In other words, when somebody is leaving, or if one of our neighboring communities had somebody leaving, we should entertain those discussions with them to see if there is a cost savings that both communities could have. I did reach out to South Berwick in reference to this, just so I could have some sort of answer from the town manager there. Indicated to me at this particular point that he would not be prepared to share in a code enforcement officer at this time. They're still in transition with their department, the CEO they have, and they're not prepared to enter into that at this time.
Well, being a code enforcement officer's salary's in this, I guess that's what, the plan is in there, and is there legal fees in this too for the planning board?
There's some legal fees there, but they're not the ones that the planning board are contemplating now. Those come out of the budget that you've already passed, which would be your general expense account.
Okay. So I'll move, what are we on? Article
9.
10. I'll move Article 10.
Second.
Further discussion? And this is a relatively busy list of activities. We're not talking about competency or job performance in this evaluation. We're strictly looking at activity as it relates to full-time versus part-time. And we know that South Berks feels like they're keeping theirs busy full-time, and this is quite a number of inspections and permitting and things like that, so.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure that it's listed there, but I do know that electrical inspections are done by a fellow from North Berwick. They trade off, as well as South Berwick fills in when one or the other is off, on vacation or whatever. During that period of time, the code enforcement from the other town comes in and fills in, so we're covered in that respect.
Yeah, we're reciprocating with our neighbors.
Yeah.
So if somebody's on vacation, they're willing to come in, and we extend the courtesy to them as well.
It's a balanced arrangement,
That's
actually.
something we've done for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
All right. All in favor of approving Article 10 as written?
Thank you. Article 11, shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $594,238 for the Public Works Department account? Begins 2012-13. Just a point of clarification, we've reduced this on, by $30,660. It takes into account your feeling that we should be going to a 2/5 time with the retirement of one of our employees up there that will be leaving us at the end of May. 2/5 time that the individual will be working in the Public Works Department, and 3/5 of the time that the person will be working at the transfer station. So this reflects that.
So what happens next winter when we need this guy for plowing more than 2/5 of the time? What happened to the transfer station?
Well,
You know, that used to stand alone, and I still feel as though it should.
again, I believe that we can frame, I have a meeting, both of these positions, even though we're going from 2 full-time positions to 1 time, is covered on the collective bargaining agreement. I have a meeting with them sometime next week to begin to hopefully frame up some parameters as to how this position will really work. I think we need to talk a little bit more about that job description and what it's going to look like. So certainly we'll keep you apprised and seek your advice as we go through that process.
So when you hire someone to run the transfer station, he's got to have a CDL license, he's got to have all these things in order to work for Public Works, but he certainly doesn't need it to help me undo my recycling at the transfer station.
There's certainly some unique circumstances that will avail themselves as we try to transition out of 2 full-timers into 1 full-time and to cover all the needs that we have as a municipality and to provide the services that we do.
I think what I'm trying to tell you is you've got to hire a different type of person at the transfer station than you've been used to hiring in order to be able to work at Public Works too.
Well, they need to be qualified. They need to have a CDL license and that kind of thing.
That's right, so they're going to
Yeah.
demand more money than somebody down there that is sort of a part-time. For years, we looked at the transfer station as a part-time for somebody retired and needed extra money, and it worked fine that way. It really did. And now all of a sudden, we've got full-time, and the full-timer's getting through on May, his own choice. And so we don't have to hire another full-timer down there because of any union. I mean, he's getting through, we have an opportunity, in my opinion, to go back to that. We're only open 24 hours a week. You know, it's not like we're open any length of time. So I will be voting against this one.
So you would suggest a part-timer at the transfer station and replacing the full-timer?
Well, if they don't need full-time at Public Works, hire a part-timer at Public Works. I don't know what the Public Works needs that much. I mean, they only need him for 2/5, that's still only part-time.
Well, with all due respect, you were the folks that came up with 2/5. You didn't provide.
Well, I didn't.
You didn't ask us for our recommendation.
He did, I didn't.
So that,
So when you say "we,"
the
don't include me.
38,000 that we're cutting out of this is approximately 6%. Should we just flow down a 6% savings, which will result in approximately the same dollar amount as we're looking at here, and then let them decide how they want to effectively staff it? And then,
You mean let them hire the full-time for the transfer station?
It's the same cut, I don't see why not.
Well,
we did on
it's
Bob's
a
suggestion,
whole different situation.
require that staffing arrangement.
Yep, it's a whole different
So you're
situation.
saying make the cut as it stands, but allow
Well,
the department to figure it
Let's
out?
take 6% of 632,168. Mr. Manager, you got a calculator there?
Yes, you do, sir.
So multiply that by 94%, and let's compare it to the 594, 238
What do you want to do with 632, 168?
times 0.94.
That gives you $5,942?
Should be,
No, that doesn't sound right.
You're
okay.
multiplying it by the previous total figure by .94, and that'll give you the amount for the budget. Just hit, yeah, equal. Not percent.
You got me baffled now. Go for it.
632, 168 times 0.94.
594, 238.
Well, that's the number that we have right here. That,
Okay.
you must have applied a 6% reduction.
I did.
Okay.
You asked me to.
Okay, I thought we had
No.
agreed to do the 2/5 arrangement.
No, you asked me for the 6%, but then you directed me that part of that
Okay.
6% was going to be this 2/5,
Very good.
3/5 deal.
Okay, I got
And
you.
I needed to work that out. So
We
that
just
was the
wanna- We
parameter.
just want to take that requirement off, leave the 6%, and take their staffing requirement split between the transfer station and public works off. And then we'll deal with the public works budget when we get to it.
You mean transfer station?
Excuse me, transfer station, thank you.
I was gonna say, what we're doing now is a public
Correct,
works,
yes.
yeah. So you're taking off what?
We're just taking off the
Taking off
requirement
6%.
to share staffing between the transfer station and public works.
Okay, I can accept that.
If that's how they decide to figure it out down the road, then that's fine. We're just gonna let them. just
No,
leave
I'm
it to
not.
them.
But we're gonna look at the transfer station budget in a minute,
Okay.
and we'll probably
Yeah. Okay.
do something with that here.
So,
Okay,
yeah,
so,
well, since when did the transfer station come into the public works budget anyway? When did that just enter into
It
the?
didn't.
they
I didn't
didn't.
think so.
Oh, you discussed it at your last workshop meeting.
Yeah. And I wasn't happy then, I don't think either.
All right, so for clarity, we have a motion and a second for, we do not, okay, so we're gonna, I think what the board wants to do is accept Article 11 as written, 594, 238 being the dollar figure, and we're gonna take off the requirement that they share staffing resources between the transfer station and public works. But we're still gonna cut this budget to 6%.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
You better do what you just said you'd do too, or you will never hear the last of it.
Article 12 is
You're
the,
getting
shall
bitter.
town,
Yes, I am getting bitter.
shall the town vote to appropriate the sum of $250,000 from fund balance for FY 2012-13, authorize its use for road, bridge, sidewalk construction and repairs, including expenses for curb, drainage, engineering fees when required, with the funds to be used in connection with the State of Maine Urban Rural Initiative Program with unspent balances to be carried forward each year. I believe this is the only budget item we have within the budget that is requesting that you take $250,000 from your fund balance. So there's no impact on the taxes as a result of that.
Now, the
Although the chairman perhaps disagrees with that philosophy.
engineering fees, what would that be? We have a civil engineer, so do we have to hire another one for any
It's just
reason?
it's just a catchphrase that's been within the warrant article for many, many years.
I move Article 12 be accepted.
Second.
But that does mean we won't be hiring an engineer where we've already got one. Am I correct?
Right. Yeah, we would not, unless there was a specific purpose to hire one as a result of other things. We have our engineer who designs and stamps these projects, so we don't have to hire somebody to do it.
All in favor?
Did we get a second for that? I'm sorry.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just speak up.
If
All
you
right, I
don't
think
need
that
it-
was unanimous at different times.
Yeah. Yeah, I still don't understand, did you get an engineer? Why you gotta have
Yeah, we could
engineering
take
fees in it?
500,000 out of that
Probably
fund and use 250 to
If you have a
offset
special
taxes,
job
right,
that
Mr.
doesn't
Manager?
qualify
You could.
for
Yes, sir,
example,
you
building
could.
a bridge.
He's a civil engineer.
No.
Article 13.
Big
The
difference.
town vote to authorize the expenditure of all revenues received from the State of Maine Urban Rural Initiative Program for FY 2012-13 for road improvements, as authorized by the program with unspent balances be carried forward each year.
I move that it be accepted as read.
I'll second it, and I think that's around 66,000, it's been that for years,
Is correct?
am I right?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
All in favor? This is Article 13.
Thank you. Article 14, shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,295,738 for the police department account for FY 2012-13, which begins July 1st, 2012.
Okay, we cut that 3% from last Saturday.
And what was the amount it was cut?
It's cut 3%.
Yeah, I understand that.
It totaled $39,081 total.
Chief, does that mean we're gonna lose our DARE officer?
We're gonna, if I can speak real quickly.
Please.
It will create a reduction in manpower. I did have some interaction with Paul Andre from the school district this afternoon. One of the things I tried to do is see if I could negotiate a little bit more with the district as far as picking up some of the costs of that position. I'll softly say that we did have a pretty good conversation, although he can't give me a definite yes or no right now because, A, his budget hasn't been voted for and approved, and he hasn't gone before his board. He did indicate he was gonna speak with his board, I believe, tonight to kind of get some idea if it was something that we could pursue. It was only a 10% difference. In other words, right now, our cut of 75-25 would go 85-15. It figures out that we'd save a little over $7,000 on our budget. If that doesn't happen with the 3% reduction, what I won't be doing is filling an open vacancy, an open full-time slot that I have now. I did take your request. In fact, I watched it on the television last week. Started playing with the numbers literally that evening. What's happened over the last several years is, as I'm coming in with zero increases other than uncontrollable costs, I've slowly dwindled away the operating budget to a place where I feel very, I'm taking a risk at saying I can cut some of my operating costs. If you look at the budget itself, most of my costs, the big costs, are fixed costs. Fixed, when I say that, fixed to, say, for instance, the contract. The language in the contract is changing, giving more overtime to the full-time officers. And my funding in that area has been stagnant. Other changes, like the retirement plan, the percentage that we started was 6.5%. That was what the town matched. It's increased from its inception here in Berwick from 6.5. It's currently 12.1%, which is another drastic change. So when you came back with a 3% cut, the only areas I can cut are those costs that I can't control. And that means that I would have to reduce manpower in order to meet budget. By reducing or eliminating the one open position, there's a savings difference between the cost of a full-time person and the 3% reduction that you asked for. I shifted the remaining costs into the overtime budget and part-time budget to help cover the hours that we would have used with that other position. I don't know if that makes sense to you. At the end of the day, it's going to be a reduction in manpower of 906 hours. My captain, myself, the detective will fill in spots. Just recently, the captain's worked some night shifts, and that's something that we'll do in order to, like I said, breach that difference between what we currently have and what we're going to have with this 3% cut. I'd urge you not to do it, but that's all I can do. I fully understand the position you're in. The economy's bad. But as the economy's gotten bad, obviously the budgets have been getting quite tight, and the $40,000 has to come from somewhere. If I said it was going to come out of operating budget, I would fear that I'd be back in front of you at some point asking for more money just to operate. I gave this a serious amount of consideration. I even met with my staff on Thursday, presented my staff with 3 options that I'd come up with to see if I was off in left field. We all left the room with the same thing, that it's going to have to be a position. Fortunately for us, the position is vacant right now, so I'm not technically letting a person go. It's open, so I'm I'll be closing a open slot, basically.
Tim, is that 12% retirement match or whatever it is that unusual? I mean, because you said it jumped from 6.5 to 12.5?
It's the state retirement system, so it's the state that's setting that.
Mandates it.
I mean, that wasn't negotiated or anything?
Well,
It's not in-
when you opted into the 20-year retirement plan, you opted into what the Maine state system was going to provide you, or ask from you, I should say. And they've asked, starting when we first signed that contract, it was at 6.5%. It's now at 12.1.
It's almost, it is over, almost double.
Very close to double.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a big increase.
It's a significant cost. It
Well, there
is.
was an 8% increase in between that, right? That's a 3-year period?
Yes.
All right.
No.
But nevertheless, that's a big increase in anybody's.
But you were in the state legislature.
Well, I didn't pass that one.
It went 8, 10.1, and then 12.1 this year. Those recommendations were recommendations that were made through the Maine Chiefs evaluation when they came down.
Yeah, but they got a lot of money up there. We don't have it down
Well,
here. And you know, you when you talk to Mr. Andre next time, tell him that, 40,000 out of 809,000 increase for Berwick is not a lot of money.
He was, I felt positive when I came off the phone
Good.
with him. We had a candid conversation. Of course, neither of us can look at you and say, it's a done deal. He has to worry about his board, and I can't give you a yes or no answer until he knows on his side.
Well, I'm sure you looked at his budget.
I did.
There were some big increases.
I agree.
Yeah.
Do all of your hourly officers work about an equivalent amount of overtime? And do they work,
Some work a little more than others.
do they work overtime each week on average?
Yeah, I would say each week they get a certain amount of overtime. Not guaranteed, it's just the nature of the job.
Because when I questioned you during the budget discussion a few weeks ago, I felt like I uncovered a fair amount of discretionary training, and I asked you to take a look at not conducting discretionary training in weeks that your officers are working overtime, because ultimately you're paying overtime for the training, which is discretionary.
Right.
And I know how you feel about the, discretionary training being highly necessary, but I would think that there are savings to be had there if you can somehow control that mix.
We do that. The contract does allow me to forego the overtime issue. In other words, I approve training when I don't have to use overtime to give it to the guys. There are certain events, though, that I have to pay overtime when we have department-wide training. Somebody's going to be on overtime. So there's sometimes I can't avoid it. But if I send a guy away for, say, a week, he's not getting overtime to go away for training. That would be his work week. Or say I just send him away for a day class. We can adjust their schedule to alleviate the amount of overtime. So that language is in the contract. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're at a 3% reduction level in this budget, and we just heard the chief say that will largely be accomplished by not replacing a full-time position.
Well, but he said he was trying to negotiate with the superintendent too on there. Hopefully, Paul will feel sorry for us.
Chair would entertain a motion. Do we have a motion a second? We do not, right?
I move that we accept the figures of 1,295 plus.
I don't think we have any choice. We're cutting all departments, and we're gonna have to, kind of go across the board. And I realize that, living downtown's a little different than living out in the country. There's more activity down here at night.
Yeah, the police department budget during the last 5 years, on average, was pretty much right in line with the average of all departments.
Yeah.
So. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second to approve Article 14 for the police department at 1.295738, which is a 3% reduction over last year?
I'll second it.
Oh, I was waiting for a second. Oh, I thought you already had it.
I don't think we did, Melissa, did we? We did not. Okay, so now we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Shall vote to raise and appropriate the sum, this is Article 15, the sum of $503,268 for the fire department account for FY 2012-13, which begins July 1, 2012.
And what's the amount we reduced that by?
6%.
Reduced it by 6%, which equates to,
32,000, not quite.
correct.
32,000?
Approximately, yeah.
And as you know, the chair was advocating last week for a 20% reduction of this budget, and I did receive a lot of feedback this week that that was a fair number and that the townspeople wanted the opportunity to vote on that. So,
Well,
and as Mrs. Wright pointed out at the beginning of the public comment section, the fire department budget has increased 98% over the last 5 years, triple the average of all other departments.
and I realize that, but
And the fire activity in town has not increased.
May I make some
Go ahead,
comments,
Mr.
Mr.
Manager.
Chairman? I think we all can agree that the increases within this budget are directly correlated to a decision that was made several years ago about applying for and accepting the SAFER grants. At that point, we had 2 full-timers, the chief and 1 firefighter. The SAFER grants allowed us 2 additional firefighters. So clearly, the difference here is that our service, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, and there's a lot of debate on that, is predicated on the fact that we have 4 full-time people that work for the town of Berwick. Now, there was a reason why that was all brought around, and I think Selectman Murphy alluded to it a little bit last year, at our last meeting, as a result of the development of our department, how it developed, and why it developed the way it did as a result of the loss of the large manufacturing firm, Prime Tanning, here in town. So that's the reason why you have this difference. And you just need to, that's the distinction that needs to be addressed at some point.
And I still feel very firmly that was a problem at the time, and, well, it still is, because it's vacant over there. But,
Don't we need 4 more full-timers for the night shift? Because
Well, no.
they're not responding to night calls. Our EMT folks are not responding to the 1-year-old with a heart attack during the evening, the night of the Super Bowl, 3 tones, and no firemen. The police department takes injuries for putting out that fire, and then
Mr. Chairman, that's not true. That's not true on that one on Allen Street. So I would really suggest you get your facts straight before you start accusing anybody, please. Thank you.
About a little respect for the chairman.
You're out of order, Mr. Plant. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
The chair did not recognize you.
Thank you.
I had assumed, and I guess I don't know just what you're talking about, because at night, people are, the firemen are home, the volunteers are home, and I'm assuming that when they're called, they go out. They always did, so I don't know what's happening now. You said that they don't respond to the calls?
Mr. Plant, I'll call on you at this time to go ahead and defend the call that is in question.
Excuse me, but I don't have to defend it. I know what happened.
Oh, okay.
All's I'm asking
Thank you. You may be seated.
All's I'm asking
No, I'm not. You're refusing to answer my question, so you can stop your commentary.
Why doesn't he explain to us?
He doesn't want to.
I'll explain to you, Mrs. Murphy. We
Please step
have
up to the
received a
microphone,
call.
Mr. Plant.
We received a call, okay, for a house fire on School Street.
Dennis, can you stand up?
And
It wasn't 3 tones, I don't believe. I believe it was 2 tones. Fortunately, the police department got there before we did, and they had extinguishers, and they knocked the fire down, and we went in and did the rest of it, okay? So I don't know where the chairman is getting his information as far as 3 tones, and we don't show up, because we do. The issue is that it does take time to come from home to the station. Okay, to your point, years ago, there used to be the tannery, first shift, second shift,
That's right.
and they used to get there within a couple minutes. And when they lived, and there was people that lived in town, okay? You don't have that anymore. You have the same amount of people, but the people living out in the country. So it takes time for those people to get here, okay? So, in the day shift is the same thing. We don't have anybody around during
And
the
that's
day.
what I think that's what I've been trying to say,
Okay.
that the times have
With
changed.
those 4 people, and I believe you people had that information in your packet that Lieutenant Tibbetts gave you, that without those 4 people, you have an average of a half a person that would respond during the day.
Well, I think if you remember, and I was on the board when we did put on the full-time. And when we put on full-time chief, we put it to a vote of the people of Berwick, and they passed it overwhelmingly. No, you weren't on the board, but,
For the
Yes.
SAFER grant? Yes, I was.
yes, that's right, you were. And that was the reason why we did it, because they couldn't get a fire truck out.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why that the budget is up as high as it is over the last 5 years. Because every year, from the first year to the 5th year, the town had to pay so much more towards that grant. And again,
Oh, that's true.
and then at the end of the 5th year, which is this year, I believe,
Yeah.
the town is
Gotta
paying
pick up
the
the
full
full thing,
boat.
yeah.
Okay? But you see in the packet that you got that the people are just not here. They're not there. And it's not as if we don't have enough people, because we have a full house. We're allowed, I think it's 30 people, we got 32 on-call firefighters. So it's not the point that, that we don't have enough, it's just that the people are not around. So that's why the people ended up
At
voting what
night,
they
if you
did.
get a call at night, the volunteers are home, and I'm sure that they will come out.
Sure. I mean, everybody has a point in time when you'll have a fire or a call here and there that you only get 2 or 3 guys. That happens. You ask anybody around the area, and they'll tell you the same thing. And then other days, you get 6, 7, 8, 9 people. Again, the time frame from the time the tone goes off until they get there is a lot longer now, because people living out of town. They're not living in town anymore. So
surrounding communities are facing the same challenges with volunteerism. Why haven't they staffed up their fire departments? Why has Berwick's budget tripled in the last 5 years and their budgets remained relatively flat?
Well, I
with
think
Berwick's being 3 times the average of surrounding communities.
first of all, you'd have to go and ask them, okay? I can't answer that. I can only
Okay,
I can only
I'll take a
ask-
stab at
Can I
answering
finish,
for
please?
them. They
I-
haven't identified the need.
Can I finish? The issue is Berwick, okay? I don't know what South Berwick does, although, yes, I do. South Berwick has 5 or 6 people that work for P. Gagnon. They have a foreman that works for the water department. So 9 times out of 10, they're around during the day.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know that.
But I got to tell you something. There's been many calls at nighttime when they've only gotten 2 people. North Berwick is the same way. We go to North Berwick on a structure fire automatic response, because they don't know whether or not they're going to be able to get people to get their trucks out or not. So to ask that question,
That's why we have mutual aid.
but that's an abusing mutual aid. Okay, mutual aid is for, if you have a house fire and you need help, you go. Mutual aid is not for, the town doesn't have enough people to get a truck out, so I'm gonna call Somersworth. That's abusing the mutual aid system.
So are you saying that Elliott, South Berwick, and North Berwick are abusing mutual aid because their budgets are 1/3
No,
of
that's
what our
not what I'm
budget is,
saying.
and they don't have full-time staff?
That's not what I'm saying. Please don't put words in my mouth.
I'm just trying
That's
to
not what I'm
understand. I'm
saying.
trying to understand why you think we need a budget that's triple surrounding communities
think-
when they face the same challenges as we do.
Mr.
And
Haley,
Berwick
I
does not
think we
have
just,
more fires
I
than
think I
anybody
just
else.
explained the reason why we feel that we need those 3 people, or 4 people.
I'm
Because
not
we
sure-
don't get anybody here during the day.
I'm not sure what North Berwick, and I don't know this, but maybe Pratt Whitney lets them out, maybe Huzzy Manufacturing does, because they're pretty, Huzzy Manufacturing especially is a pretty friendly business there in North
They
Berwick.
get 1 person out of Huzzies.
Only get one?
That's it. And I don't believe they get any out of Pratt and Whitney.
Well, the chair would suggest there's been a bit of a dynasty built in the Berwick Fire Department over the last 5 years.
I didn't hear you. What was that? No, I didn't hear you. Would you repeat that?
Yes, I said, it's the chair's opinion that a bit of a dynasty has been built in the Berwick Fire Department in the last 5 years.
That's your opinion,
I said it was my opinion.
and we can prove otherwise. So, you know, anytime, Mr. Chairman, you want to come over and see what we do, in fact, you could grab an application and come join us, and you'll see just how just what we do. Any one of yous.
Me too?
Me too. We got women firefighters.
Not my age.
So to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, I believe we have answered your question as far as why we need those people on days. You may not believe that, but we did.
Well, it's not up to me. I was elected to represent the townspeople, and I don't believe that round of applause from the audience was for
I didn't think that you
your side
represented
of
the
the
other
argument.
7,000 people that live in this town. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Represent me, Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Poirier.
I just want to say that I spend a lot of time since our last meeting just surveying people in the community, whether it been at the ball field or at Mayo's or at the post office or knocking on people's doors in my neighborhood and just stopping people walking in my neighborhood. And I think that the preliminary vote that we made last week is indicative of the general population of the town, in that we should support this budget as it is written here on this warrant. So I motion to approve this warrant as written on this warrant article in the amount of $503,268 for the fire department, which is a reduction of 6% from that which was requested.
Okay, you know, I'm gonna say, I didn't do all running around that Brian has done here, but I got a few phone calls from people that I really respect and sit down and discussed it with them, and they didn't, you know, with the background that I've got on the boards and with the fire department, I don't have the problem with it. I really don't. I feel as though that if my house is afire, I want them there, just as soon as they can get there. I really don't want to lose it.
Public comment as it relates to this, sir?
My name's Roland Tibbetts. I live on 494 School Street. But just recently, my parents, Kenneth and Evelyn, had a house fire in 118 Old Pine Hill Road. It's close by. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I think they were there within 12 minutes. But we were able to save my 3-year-old son, my dad that's 80, and I got out. Nothing but professionalism from the get-go from them. By the time my mom came back from shopping at Walmart, Dennis already had Red Cross there. You guys do not understand how rough it is until you go through it. When you lose everything you own, or almost everything, you've got nowhere to go. And this money right here, I would say you need to spend this money. And the same way with the police department, you need to spend that money. We got too many people running around, half thoughts in their heads. My truck got broken in twice on Old Pine Hill Road, robbed. I lost a lot of stuff out of my truck, but that's the way it is. We cannot afford to take another cop off the street. We can't afford not to give the fire department the proper tools they need to make it work. Now, I've been in this town my whole life. Had a piece of land since 1989. I've been paying taxes. Built a house in 2000. I now have a child that I'm almost thinking that I'm not going to be able to get him to go through school here because, one, I have escrow taxes on my mortgage. So my house is down 30% or whatever it is. It's worth $165. You're taxing me $232. Taxes keep going up. Well, there goes my monthly payment because it's escrow. I can't get out of escrow, so I can't wait 6 months to go get this money to pay my mortgage. It's just going to go up every month. You're choking me out of my house. If I get hurt, I have an operation, let's forget it. What's going to go next? My food, power. I'm a single dad. My parents just moved in with me. I'm just saying, you guys, I mean, I know it's tough. It's tough for everybody. Everybody's got a story to tell in this room of how tough it is. But don't mess with our services. Don't mess with the police department. Don't mess with the fire department. We can cut back on town people, on the, public works. We can get these guys that have their own businesses here and give everybody a chance to do something instead of just one guy doing all the culverts. Get to share the wealth. Anybody needs any help? Get him down the transfer station and work a Saturday. Hey, I came down to town once. I needed $200 for a light bill. I never was accountable for that. They said, here you go. I said, well, I'll do something for it. Well, let me go paint some hydrants. Let me go down the transfer station. Let's pick up around this place. Like, Mr. Stone said at the beginning, signs everywhere. We got the home of the prime Tammy sitting there.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, also, I'd like to say, if they hadn't got there, your dad might not be with us today.
Oh, definitely.
He's in a wheelchair, and it was pretty touch and go for a few minutes, I guess. I've talked to his mother several times.
In fairness, anybody else want to take the opposite side of that testimony? One more comment. Yes, sir.
My name is Tony Sincotta. I've been a resident of this town for 78 years, with the exception of a few years in the military. I personally feel that any cuts of 20% to the fire department is excessive. I feel that it puts the town at risk, especially people like myself who live 3 miles out of town. Mr. O'Connor lives further away than that, and he's on the board. I ask you to seriously consider not cutting the fire department budget by 20%.
How many years have you lived in Berwick, sir?
78.
You must have really felt insecure outside of the past 5 years without the growth of this budget.
I don't understand what you're saying, sir.
Well, you're speaking on behalf of
myself.
Yeah.
Of myself. Okay?
I was looking for comments on the other side. This is another comment in favor of
I
not reducing the
apologize
fire budget.
because that's not the way I feel.
Okay.
Now, I didn't watch
But this budget has only recently grown to the point where we have four full-time staffers. And my comment was that only has happened in the last 5 years or so. So being a long-term resident of Berwick, you must have not slept well prior to this department being built up as much as it is, because for many, many years it wasn't like this, and it was.
I think the fair question would be is how did he feel prior to this 5 years, not trying to insinuate that he felt a particular way. Maybe the appropriate question would be, how did you feel prior to?
Sir, how did you feel prior to the budget going up 90%, 98%?
I think we have an outstanding fire department in this town, one of the finest volunteer departments in the state. I think that Mr. Plant explained himself extremely well to the board as to why the costs have gone up. And I'm happy to see that there are people down there during the day, even if it's only 2 or 3, so they can respond to a fire in case I have a fire. 20% is outrageous, in my opinion. Thank you.
Very good.
Before, when the tannery was there, we had people. I think that's the message. Yeah, some of us were trying to get out. We had people there ready to go. When the tannery left, what business is there in Berwick to let anybody out of work to go to a fire? The only thing is, it's a town hall here, and I don't see any of them going.
I suspect the board has reached consensus on this issue.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second.
All right. All in favor of reducing the article number 16.
15.
Excuse me.
15.
All right, Article number 15, by 6% to $503,268. Please raise your right hand. All opposed.
Article 16, shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $458,929 for the refuse disposal account for 2012-13, which begins July 1, 2012.
Now, is the wages in this account?
What we've done is we've done what we were asked to do before. It's been reduced by 6%.
Okay.
What was the actual figure, Keith?
It's 458,929 now.
And we reduced it how much?
It's 450.
18,000.
Yeah, it was 18,000. You're right, I'm
18,000?
sorry.
Are the wages in here for the transfer station in the old town?
The only thing we've done is change the dollar amount. We haven't worked on the dynamics of how the line items will be fabricated.
I understand that. What I'm asking, are the wages in this, in this article to pay the people down there? Is
Yeah,
it?
yes, there's wages in there to pay for personnel there.
That's what I was asking.
So we're going to remove the restriction on sharing personnel on this line, this article as well.
Well, you're gonna with my vote. I don't know about the rest of you.
Are we going to, we're not in favor of going line by line, making the attendant part-time versus full-time, but that's part of your solution in reaching this.
That's right. Well, for 24 hours, you get full-time? I'll take the job then if you wanna continue doing it that way. I can go down there and tell people where to throw stuff.
Well, I
But,
believe Mr. Ball indicates he works 40.
Huh?
He's got other responsibilities. He's performing his job functions at times other than when the transfer station is open.
Such as?
I think he sent us all an email telling us what he did. He
Well,
sent
you
me
know
an
what? That's one place I did. I used to ride down around there, and one day I was riding down, and the guy that collects the clothes, he come out, jumped out of the truck, and went and locked the gate and got back in the truck. So there was nobody there that day to lock the gate or let him in or out. He did that on his own. And I know that Waste Management, because I was on the board when we hired all those people, and it wasn't even Waste Management then, it was one before them. And they all had keys to get in, to pull and everything. And I'm assuming they still do, and they do. And he does make telephone calls. Well, that doesn't take long.
Yes, sir.
I used to work for Waste Management. My name's Mike Doran. About the dump budget or transportation, you realize that you have the most expensive waste disposal company in the country that you're contracted with? That'd probably be the best place to cut your budget there. I used to work for them. I know they're the most expensive.
We're locked in for another few years on
That'd be the best way to cut their budget, is them. They're the most expensive.
So, Mr. Manager, if we take 6% out of this budget, the consideration of full-time to part-time staffing in that area is still an option, correct?
Right, right now, you've only removed 18,000, so it'd be more than that. So it-
More than that.
Yes. So if you go back to the original amount, which was 476, 617, 6% would be 28,597. Does that sound right?
We would be cutting it?
So we only cut that by
18,000, so,
Yes.
yes. Because you were, at the time, you were thinking 3/5 and 2/5. So you didn't cut it completely by 6.
Okay, so because most of the fees in this article and in this department are fixed relative to the cost of disposal, the only real personnel opportunity is making that full-time position a part-time position. And I'm not sure we don't have this, 6% is gonna be too much on this line.
I think you're right.
cut it in half. Is 3% too much? They
Well,
are
you've
fixed
cut-
costs.
Did I
You've
say
cut it by
something?
18,000 now,
Yeah,
right?
just say it.
Did I say something?
Cut it by 18,000 now, so.
Oh, did you say something? Oh, no, that's the fire department, leave it. The police department.
What do you guys want to
We
do?
went to part-time on the transfer station manager.
Yes?
Are we gonna be able to get somebody?
How
to
much
manage?
savings would that give us?
Well, it would save all insurance benefits and all those goodies.
Correct. Right, you're gonna shave on insurance and longevity and those
Yeah.
types of things, and you'll be curbing, right now it's a 40-hour week, you'd be reducing that to, I would say, somewhere between 24 and 30 hours, depending on activity and coordination. They're open 24 hours a day.
He was getting for 40 hours?
Yes,
Working 40 hours.
Yeah,
he's working a
God.
40-hour week.
But, come on.
I'm not in opposition to what you're stating.
What's the actual 3% figure?
I still
3%?
maintain 3 days there and 2 days at highway, we save one full-time position. And to me, that's
Well, you
a
say-
practical way of doing it.
3% would be
But why would you put
14,298,
full-time
so
down?
you're taking more
I
than
mean,
3%
why would you
of
pay
that.
benefits? As-
3 days.
Wait, no,
3
but you're
days.
paying benefits.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Only because we have to, people have to survive.
That's right, but most of those people are retired, that we always hired, and they had their other benefits. That's why we hired retired people. Ask Mr. Poirier, he used to work down there. Did you get all kinds of benefits?
No,
I didn't think so.
when we got to be retirement, they took it out of our pays.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to move things along, I would recommend that you allocate the $458,929. It's an $18,012 reduction in it. Provides some direction for us, and I think it meets the expectations that you have. I'm hearing what the board is saying in terms of the feeling that perhaps a full-time person is not needed there, and that we should be looking at making some other decisions relative to that position.
So moved. Second?
All in favor? 4-1.
It was full, it was full one?
You opposed?
I oppose, yep.
Opposed, 4-1.
4-1, okay. 17 is shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $83,862 for the Recreation Department.
I move that be accepted as read.
Yeah, I'll second that. 'Cause she was cut every year so far up until this year.
Is that
There
a
was a
second?
Got a
Motion and a
motion and a
second.
second.
All in favor?
Thank you. 18, shall town vote to raise and appropriate sum of $55,000 for town building Scott Reserve account for FY 12-13, which begins July 1, 2012. The account will be used to perform major repairs to any and all municipal-owned buildings. Funds will be dispersed after a recommendation with the CIP Building Committee and majority vote of the board.
Now, is this article non-lapsing,
Yes?
whatever's left? Did we say that in the article?
No?
You don't think you ought to? We always
Not a
did.
We haven't for many, many years since I've been here.
Well, you haven't been here that long, I've been here a lot longer. You wanna argue that
I'm
one?
not gonna argue that with you, Selectman Murphy.
I move we accept number 18.
Second.
All in favor?
That was 5-0? Okay, thank you. 19, shall town vote to raise appropriate sum of $65,065 for the Community Agency Appropriations Account.
Okay, now that's coach buses in there, and also the ambulance service,
Yes?
yes.
Yep, I provided you some
Yeah.
background
Yeah,
information,
yeah, I've got that.
specifically just for your own general information, so you have an idea.
All of those items that were requested, Keith, is that in this particular budget or they show up somewhere else?
They show up in this budget, community appropriations, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Make a motion to accept Article 19 as written.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you. Shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $182,356 for the annual fire protection costs?
That's the hydrants.
That's correct?
Move we accept it.
Second.
In favor?
Town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 for general assistance account.
That's a catchy one, and I'm wondering how that's gonna play out. We may have to go into additional funding to support
Right,
that.
the statute allows us to override or
Yeah,
negatively expend that.
so we can use this figure, but
That's correct. If we find that it's going to be, the board or the staff will keep you folks advised. Every month, you get your budget review, so you can look at those budget numbers and
But,
decide.
Also, when he cut that, but they also cut some of the rules, am I right, Judy? And so they don't have to give it out like they used to. There's some different change in the rules of general assistance.
yeah, but with a $5 million cut in the state, it's certainly gonna affect us down the road.
As he said- as he said at the convention.
You must give a certain
As
amount.
he said at the convention, get off the couch and go to work.
How careful are we on documenting?
Document. And that, yes.
You have to have all the right documentation in order to receive the reimbursement.
And in most cases, we will contact the department, speak to the person who, if we have a question, we'll call them and say, do we do this or do we not? I have to say, most of the time, $1 off and they'll tell you, no, don't help them. And that's the department telling us.
Is there a motion to pass this?
We don't have a motion yet.
I'm so moved.
Second.
In favor?
22 is a carry forward the following previous approved designated fund balances. The federal stormwater program account first authorized in 2000, reauthorized in 2002. That has $8,237 in it for you folks. The unfunded liability account to pay for certain accrued liabilities. Presently, it has $12,336 in it. The handicap repair and modification account to make various repairs and modifications, town-owned buildings, that has $11,003 in it. Which pleasure.
I move to be accepted.
Second.
All in favor?
Shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $72,500 as a contribution to the Berwick Library Association?
So moved.
Second.
The chair did receive some pushback on this week.
Yeah, I'll abstain from this, or recuse myself.
Got a little
If there's a
myself.
debate, if there's gonna be a debate, I'll leave the,
In speaking to that, I'll just say that the benchmarks that the library provided, the Library Association provided, indicated that they were underfunded compared to other communities. So with benchmarking being one of my key criteria for everything, I'm still in favor of this increase.
Motion is made.
Second?
All in favor? 4-0.
24, shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for the purpose to prepare an update for the comprehensive master plan for the urban overlay district. This is the prime tanning is central to the district, inclusive of the shoreland commercial industrial and commercial industrial districts and their immediate neighborhoods. Said funds to be used for expenses and professional service to assist the town in the development of a vision for the urban overlay district to be incorporated into the comprehensive master plan update for the town of Berwick.
I move this article.
I second.
In favor? 5-0.
25, shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $39,000 to the Berwick Sewer District. The funds would be known as a betterment fee, and the district indicates that their focus for the funds at this time is on the rehabilitation of the School Street Pump Station.
I move this article.
Second.
All in favor?
Article 26, there isn't an actual vote. You just have to let me know whether or not you want it to retain. It's the town vote to charge interest on unpaid taxes at the rate of 7% per annum and set the date when the taxes are committed for the fiscal year 2012-13, which is July 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2013. Become due and payable as of October 15th, 2012 and April 15th, 2013. Send interest to be collected after October 15th, 2012 and April 15th, 2013, and allow the tax collector to accept prepayment of taxes prior to the tax commitment date.
Move be passed.
No objections last week, none this week?
No.
I have one question I'd like to ask Janet on this. If I don't pay my taxes by October 15th, one half, you're gonna put interest. Is it on the whole or on the half? Okay, I'm just kind of curious about
In
that.
your case, it's on the whole.
Pay your taxes. You better pay your taxes.
Article
Oh, God, I do.
27
I want my name in the book.
is fairly,
That's a
this is a new article that I placed on there, and I want to explain myself, and you guys can decide whether or not you want to leave it or not. So town vote to authorize the raising and appropriating funds up to the amount approved in FY 2011-12 for any municipal operating budget on this warrant not approved. Now, back in 2009, we had a warrant article similar to this, but at that time, it was acted, it would be in effect until authorized by a future town meeting vote to either rescind it. But it was specific for the amount of money that had to be allocated, and it was based on the 08-09 operating budget. So the reason I placed it back in there is that this one is clearly indicating that whatever doesn't pass would revert back to the previous year's budget.
So if a group got together, they could wipe out all our reductions?
They could, but in my history, I've never seen it
Yeah, I don't think it
happen.
would happen, but it's possible.
But what it does is provides a fallback in the event that something
Yeah.
happens, and we at least have an operating budget until you folks recuperate, reevaluate, and decide what you want to do.
Well, you can't, if it reverts back, that becomes a budget for that year.
It does, but it provides you, the other one had the 08-09.
Yeah, I understand that, and that would have been even worse.
Correct.
But, no, but I'm saying, you know, if enough people got together, they could change any one of these votes we've taken tonight.
And we saw a large contingent supporting one department here earlier that's now
I mean,
vacated. So I'm
I
concerned
remember,
about that
I remember the
article.
time we got a group together to buy a new piano for the school, that was for the district. I was leading that little band, and we got a new piano.
But you can't play.
I know it.
I move we accept that.
You make a motion to accept it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, the article goes back to 2009.
Goes back to the 08-09 budget.
Okay.
We're bringing it up to 2011-12,
If you agree to have it on your warrant.
yeah.
Why
It's on most budgets, anyway. I mean, most, even the school
Yeah.
budget says that.
And it only affects your municipal operating budgets. So in other words, if the library budget got defeated,
Yeah,
there'd
that
be
would.
no allocation for it.
Oh, wow, that's another thing. Yeah, maybe I don't want this.
It affects, it would
What would,
affect,
what would that example go back to? It would go back to 69.5 in this case, right?
well, no, if it was a library, there would be no allocation whatsoever if it got defeated. The only ones it would affect
You mean it would be no allocation at all? We get no money?
That's correct.
We'd lock the door.
Because
Well,
it's
I
for
hope you get a
only
key.
municipal operating budgets. And the municipal operating budgets
No,
identified.
you're living dangerously. When you make those statements.
The municipal operation budgets that are identified would be your general expense, your assessors, your administration, your town hall, planning and ordinance, public works, police, fire, refuse, and recreation.
All of the peripheral budgets that we approve would not be.
And I have numbers there if you want to look at, I did write the numbers down. So let's just, for argument's sake, let's say the Public Works budget gets defeated. According to this, you'd go back to the 0809, which is on the books now, which would give you 601,787, would be an increase of 7549.
It's sort of a safety net, actually.
It
What's
is.
the alternative if this is not in there?
The alternative is that you would go back to the 0809 budget funding. So you would still have the ability to have money allocated. It would not be up to the standards that would normally have been approved generally in what was being requested, but it would give you a safety net, so you could begin to evaluate and decide whether or not you needed to go back.
Is there an
after.
opportunity to revisit that in the November election to maybe make up any shortcomings
Yes.
if required? I don't like the thought of a group organizing and being able to have such a dramatic impact on warrant articles as this. This would possibly eliminate funding for the library. It would possibly, increase other budgets where we voted to decrease them.
There are some, I got a telephone call.
Well, this one wouldn't impact the library no matter what, correct?
Oh, I thought you said it would.
It would not, because it's not a municipal operating budget. It would only be the ones that are specifically identified as municipal operating budgets. So that one that I identified, as well as, Article 24, if that went down to 25,000 for the capital comprehensive master plan, if that went down to defeat, it would not revert back to something else. You would just lose
So as
it.
an example, Keith, can you give the figure for the police department or Public Works, what it would go back to if the articles as presented failed?
The article, if this article wasn't in there?
No, if the operating budget for Public Works, for instance, failed.
Okay.
And then the 2008-9 had to kick in, what would that figure be?
For Public Works, that would be, you'd be looking at an allocation of 601,787, which would be $7,549. That's what was approved in that budget cycle.
So are we talking 08, 09, or 11, 12?
No.
Increasing it.
What we have right now is we had a warrant article that was approved back in 2009 that said that we would revert back to the 08, 09 budgets. And it was capped because in it said this would stay in effect unless rescinded by a future town meeting vote. So it's on the books now. So if nothing else happens and you take Article 27 away and a municipal operation budget goes to defeat, it will revert back to the 08, 09 funding cycle.
And what
Whatever
this,
was out.
and what this does is upgrades it from the 2008, 2009 to the 2011, 2012. So conceivably, those levels are higher?
Yes.
What was the fire department budget in 08, 09? Just out of curiosity, Mr. Manager, since you know that's one of my hot button issues.
The budget in 08, 09 was $359,869, so it would be a reduction of $143,399. But that's on the books now. That would, so if that budget went down to defeat tomorrow,
So if the 6% reduction went down and we don't accept this, it would go back to the.
to the 08, 09
300,000.
funding, yeah.
That's the people's choice that they're looking for. I'm not in favor of Article 27 as written. I'd like to see it stay at the 08, 09 level.
I have a motion, but I did not receive a second on that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'll do a second on it. I think.
No, the growth
you
of-
all budgets go back to the previous
Yeah,
year.
right, yeah.
I mean, that's just a formality.
Not all, not in economic times like this. The growth of government has outpaced the growth of the private sector.
Well,
And,
that's true.
quite frankly,
I get a second.
quite frankly, you know, it's a problem in Washington DC, it's a problem in Berwick, Maine, and damn it, somebody's gotta stand up and do something about it. That's what this is about.
Amen.
Take it back to 2008, 2009,
but-
that's
but-
fine.
but-
We'll be
but-
fine, the town of Berwick will be fine.
Just a minute. But most of the increases are because of negotiating with the unions. I mean, the police are 40 plus 2%. I mean, that's where the increase, and you can't cut them back. So you're gonna cut back service.
What's the police budget for 08, 09?
Police budget back then was, $1,127,706. That'd be $168,032 decrease in the budget.
And what are we at right now?
We're at,
38, 39?
1 million, yeah.
1,295,000, aren't we?
Yep. So it's just a matter of whether or not you want to place this on there and trump, for a lack of a better word, trump the vote that was taken on the 09, 08 allocation.
What if we went to 2010, 2011 as middle ground?
You can do that.
What was fire department then?
Five. I'm afraid I don't have it. I've got last year's appropriations, the projected here, and I don't have it on my sheet. You
But
may
it would
have
be somewhere between this year and 2009. Yeah, you got it there.
Yeah, you do have it here.
2011?
10, 11, be 465, 595.
The motion in a second, right?
Yeah. 465, 595?
That's if you go with the chairman's recommendation to go
11.
to 10, 11 instead of 11, 12.
And so we did, what?
I apologize that I threw this in there. I thought at least you should have a debate on it before you make your final decision.
You do have a motion in a second, right?
I do on the Article 27 as it's written.
I think we're still having further discussion. We can amend the motion, or we can vote on it if there's no further discussion. But I think this is a well-intentioned but poorly executed article in this fiscal environment. No further discussion.
Well, I don't have any, nothing more to say on it.
All in favor? All
That's
opposed?
1112, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It's going to stay on then. Okay, thank you. Article 28, town to vote to require all those who make second motions at the town meeting to rise and identify themselves. This is for the open session. You do have to act on Article 29. Town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $13,500 for the federal stormwater program. Place this amount into an account established for this purpose. What's your pleasure?
I move this article. We don't have a choice.
No.
Second.
In favor?
That has to be done.
Thank you. Article 30, shall town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $21,634 for debt service in FY 2012-13 is authorized with the passage of Article 37 at the 1997 annual town meeting. Note, this is for half of the cost for repayment of the water bond, department bond issued to by the Federal Rural Development Agency for the new water treatment plant. All other debt of the town is in the Water Department Enterprise Fund budget and is paid for from revenues received by the department. What's your pleasure?
Well, what if we refuse this one? What happens? Do they come in and take over our water department?
I think if you refused it, we'd have to find the money between the enterprise fund and.
I move this article.
Second.
In favor? Eleanor, you gonna vote?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
5-0.
Yeah, I gotta have my water.
Town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 for the unfunded liabilities account for FY 12-13, which begins July 1, 2012.
I'll move this article.
Yep. Second.
I don't think it's gonna be enough, but anyway.
All in favor?
Thank you. Town vote to raise and appropriate sum of $20,000 and authorize the Board of Selectmen to hold it in a contingency account and to use it to meet unanticipated expenses, emergencies that might occur during FY 2012-13, which begins July 1, 2012.
So moved.
You want to take 6% off this?
No?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Mr. Manager, I have a question on Article 27 again. If the townspeople vote down that article and they vote down something else, then it still reverts back to 0809, right?
Yes. You're absolutely correct, sir.
It's the chair's opinion that Article 27 is terrible and it should be voted down. Maybe that's an abuse of my power, but I gotta say it.
Have you ever seen,
It's resetting the bar for everybody out there. It's resetting the bar at last year's spending. So forever and ever and ever, if we don't, if a group gets together or the townspeople vote against a cut or an article, it reverts back to this very high bloated level of 2011 spending. So that's what that's all about. I think it's a horrible
but you know
idea.
something, but give the people, that are being intelligent enough to figure that out. People don't, that doesn't happen. It's never happened that I know of in any budget that we had to revert back to another year.
Yeah.
And I've been involved in a few budgets.
Yeah. I just believe in clarity, and sometimes, we do things up here pretty quickly and in code to some degree, and I just think it warrants spelling out, and it's not meant to be an insult to anybody's intelligence.
I move we pass Article 22.
32, you mean?
We already
sorry.
passed it.
32.
I'm sorry, 32,
We already
yeah.
passed it.
We're on 34, right?
Hmm.
I have, last one is 32.
Yes,
Yeah.
we already passed that. So we're on to Article 33.
3.
These here, I just have to get authorization whether or not they're going to appear on your warrant. Shall town vote to set an interest rate of 3% as allowed by the state law as the rate to be paid to taxpayers who pay amounts in excess of amounts finally assessed, and authorize any such interest paid or abatements granted to be charged against the annual overlay.
Yeah, I'll agree with this if you can, you let me pay my taxes for next year now.
They just approved that already for me, I don't know, I tried it.
They did, they disapproved it.
Is
3% interest is pretty good money.
I thought, no better than you get to the bank.
We're going to leave this on?
Yes.
Yeah, you got to.
Article 34, shall town vote to continue the current tax club, so-called, with the payments to be made on property taxes over the full fiscal year without the late payments charges in accordance with the rules of the tax club. This authorization will remain in effect until rescinded by a future town meeting vote.
So I pass that.
Move.
Is that okay? I'm trying to get nods. Okay,
Yep.
good, thank you.
Yep.
And finally, Article 35, shall town vote to authorize the use of interest money from the Lena Clark Trust to fund interest account where there are major repairs or maintenance needs at the town hall. Note, the trust was established to take care of the town hall interest from the trust fund. It's allowed to accumulate in a money market account separate from the principal, which is being managed by a philanthropic management group, a whole subsidiary of Bank of America. The balance in the interest account was $21,442.73 on June 30th, 2011, which is the close of the prior fiscal year. Interest funds are not used for everyday repair or maintenance costs, but instead are being allowed to accumulate for one-time or major unforeseen repairs or expenses. Approval of this article will authorize these kinds of expenditures from the interest account should it become necessary to make them during fiscal year 2012-13.
I'll move that article.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would request a recess at this point, so I can go ahead and finalize this warrant, put the appropriate numbers, the 5-0 votes to it. And before you go to recess, I just want to indicate to you on your agenda, the discussion on the disorderly housing ordinance. The police officer from Portland could not attend this evening, and we coordinated a postponement of this until your June 5th business meeting to allow them to be here, so to address that with you. And after that, the only thing I would have left would be the development of the task, goals, and objectives as was identified and part of the information I gave you this evening.
Janet,
So
about
we're
how
not
much
doing the
interest do we
disorderly
get
housing
off the
allowance
Winnicott Fund every year? Do you have
ordinance,
it?
but, and we're not gonna do the goals
Yeah,
either.
well, it's not, it's not.
Depends on what you want to do. If you want to postpone it and do it on the 5th, we
No,
can do
I-
it then.
you know. No, I know.
What I really want to do before we recess, Mr. Manager,
Yes.
is I want to point out to the people of Berwick that you actually do have a choice on the fire department budget. By voting no on Article 27 and no on Article 15, you will effectively reduce the fire department budget by 20%. So there's the choice, people, that you've been looking for. It's out there. That's the way to do it. And I do believe, without objection, we are in recess.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go take care of this, and then when I get back, we can have some signatures.